are ready to begin. I now convene the November 5th and 6th, 2024 meeting of the work group to review the design and implementation of the teaching performance assessments. The Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act for teleconference meetings require that work group members who are attending the meeting via teleconference disclose if any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at their remote location. And if so, the general nature of the member's relationship with any such individuals.
To disclose for me.
What is the nature of your relationship with the individuals?
No disclosure.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Rowdy?
No disclosures.
The two.
All right. And with that, work group members who are participating via Zoom must be visible at all times on camera. Please log off Zoom if you need to leave the meeting and log in when you're ready to join the meeting. If you experience broadband or internet connectivity problems while participating in the meeting, we would remind you that would be remedied by joining without video. You must announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera. I'll take roll call. Recording secretary, will you please call the roll?
Sorry, I didn't hear, but I'm usually the first one. Devin Beasley is here.
Devin Beasley,
Here.
Alyssa Brown, Patricia Cambrillo, here. Kathy Crescia, here. Valia Diaz-Catano, Rand Duker, Vanessa Escobar, here. Ursula Estrada Ravelas,
Here.
Lori Harvey, here. Colleen Hazeman, Alicia Herrera, Linda Han, here. Jason Morgan,
Here.
Joshua Norton,
Here.
Benjamin Odell,
Here.
Andy Redfern,
Here.
Kathleen Raleigh,
Present.
Becca Sackett, Tina Sloan, Tina Sullivan, Julie Walliner, here. Matt Wallace,
Here.
Beverly Young, here. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Benjamin Odell, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Salute, pledge. I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to remind everyone about the meeting procedures before we get to today's agenda. We have work group members participating from the Commission building and also via Zoom. The public has the option to attend the work group meeting at the Commission office or participate remotely through Zoom webcast or through the US toll-free phone number. I'd like it to draw your attention to the microphones. The meeting room technology includes built-in microphones, speakers, cameras, and monitors. Please note the ceiling microphones are always on and will pick up everything that is said at all times throughout the room. So please be aware that anything that is said in the room will be captured and archived on the recording of this meeting. Therefore, any side conversations should be kept to a minimum, if at all, while you're in this room. Commenting or asking questions, work group members attending the meeting via Zoom that would like to speak, please use the raise your hand icon featured on the Zoom. Motions and roll call voting. Because this is a hybrid meeting, we will need to conduct each vote by a roll call. Zoom identification. We'd like to ask the members of the public who attend the meeting via Zoom and would like to make a public comment to check their Zoom identification. Your Zoom identification is the name used when logging into the meeting. It's important that the Zoom identification is accurate so we can call on you appropriately during public comment time. For public comment, we will cover the public comment procedures now. The chair will announce when the public comment period is open during the presentation of the agenda item and ask for anyone who wishes to comment to notify the meeting moderator. Individuals who attend the meeting at the commission office will need to submit a request to address the work group card to the meeting moderator. Those cards can be found on the table near the entrance. The meeting moderator will notify the individual when it's their turn to speak. And at that time, the individual will be able to approach the table and share their comments. Individuals who joined the meeting via Zoom webcast will need to click on the raise hand icon to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on a particular item. The moderator will notify the individual when it is their turn to speak by calling their Zoom ID. At that time, the individual will be prompted to unmute their microphone and will be able to share their comment. The Zoom ID name used by the member of the public to join the meeting will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Individuals who joined the meeting through the US toll-free number will need to press *9 on their phone to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on a particular item. The moderator will notify the individual it is their turn to speak by calling their phone number and will allow them to unmute their telephone. At that time, the individual will be prompted to press *6 and will be able to share their comment. Please note, only a partial phone number will appear to the public when the individual provides public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker to speak on a particular agenda item. We ask that you keep your remarks brief and focused on the particular item you are speaking to. I'd also like to note that this meeting is being recorded. After the meeting, the archived audio and video will be available via the Commission's website. Thank you. Morning.
So item 1A is the approval of the October 2024 TPA workgroup meeting minutes. We will now open for public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments? There are no public. The public comment period for this item is now closed. So do I have a motion to approve the October 2024 RDI TPA workgroup meeting minutes?
Moved.
You can, seconded by Vanessa Escobar. Discussion? All right, will the recording secretary call for the vote?
Devin Beasley. Devin Beasley.
He's saying aye, but it's not,
Oh,
the audio's not coming over.
okay. Patricia Camarel. Kathy Creasure.
Aye.
Van Duper. Vanessa Escobar. Ursula Estrada Rivales.
Aye.
Lori Harvey.
Aye.
Linda Hung. Aye. Jason Morgan. Joshua Norton.
Aye.
Benjamin Odell.
Aye.
Andy Redfern.
Aye.
Kathleen Rowley.
Aye.
Rebecca Sackett. Tina Sloan. Tina Sullivan. Julie Warliner.
Aye.
Matt Wallace. Beverly Young. Right, did I miss anyone? Motion carries.
All right, we are going to move to item 2A, which is our general session opening. And we'd like to start, this is just an informational item, and we'd like to see, are there any updates or information from our commission staff or our liaisons to start the day? I know, Danette, would you like to share anything?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to welcome everyone to meeting 3, day 1. I'm having terrible FOMO being on Zoom because I know that every time this group is together, the energy in the room is palpable, and I miss seeing you all in person. With that, I really am looking forward to listening and learning from you as the work continues. So hopefully I'll be back face to face in December, and good luck the next 2 days. Can't wait.
Thank you. Mr. Ibrahim?
Yes, thank you. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here over these 2 days. I just wanted to say up front that this is going to be a meeting of flexibility and accommodation and understanding. We're going to have a number of presentations from teacher preparation programs about embedding, and it's going to happen virtually, it's going to happen in person. And then we're also going to have members that are present today, perhaps not tomorrow, present in the morning, perhaps not in the afternoon. And this is due to a number of things, including children that are under the weather, elections, and the CCAC conference happening down the street. So this is a flexible couple of days. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for being good sports, and just communicate your needs, and we will do whatever we can to meet them, address them, and support you. So I wanted to do as become a ritual, just kind of touch back to the Education Code section 44320.4, which is the section of Education Code in Senate Bill 1263, which calls for this entity and calls for this work. Just to ground us, remind us, refresh the schema for what we have undertaken here. And the first piece is something that should be second nature by now. We've taken a lot of these terms and taken them from the abstract to operationalize. You've come up with some pretty rich definitions, some pretty effective definitions for these. But the purpose that we're here, why we're here, is to ensure that teaching performance assessments are valid and authentic, formative in nature, embedded in preparation, and inform program improvement through the accreditation system. So those are the whys. Those are the whys that were given to us by the legislature. And we've sort of broken those up into 5 focus areas, which we will be taking in numerical order with 4 and 5 combined together. Last time we were together, we looked at possible modifications needed to the current assessments to ensure they are valid and authentic to the work of teaching, reasonable to implement in a wide range of classroom settings across the state, appropriate for beginning teachers. So we're going to pick up where we left off with that focus area 1 today, and we're going to review some of the brainstorming that we did at the end of the last meeting in order to pick up and look at some recommendations. So that's really exciting. Today is going to be the first day that we move from our organizational meeting way back in September to sort of digging deep in October to now we're going to make some recommendations. We have a consensus protocol using Poll Everywhere, which we'll walk through at the time. There are a couple of steps to it. And we're going to start to measure how we feel about the different recommendations. All to say, everything is open. So if we don't quite like how a recommendation sounds, that's okay, because the recommendations are always open until they hit the draft phase. And that's kind of where they get first locked in on the way to final. I have a visual for it. I'll show you that instead of talking about it. And just as a reminder, so after we talk about the recommendations, we're going to move towards embedding. And that's why we're hearing from programs. We're going to hear from a local education agency. We're going to hear from a large private. We're going to hear from UCs. We're going to hear from CSUs. We're going to hear from people that are embedding the Cal TPA. We're going to hear from people that are embedding the Ed TPA. We're going to hear from the program that is embedding the FAST. And so this is going to be a really good opportunity to hear how this work is taking place on the ground. We're going to start off today with CSU Sacramento at the end of our meeting today, 4 to 5. They'll kick us off. And then we'll pick up right in the morning with the rest. So that's going to be exciting. After that, we're going to move on to talk more deeply about accreditation. And then 4 and 5 are combined. Our last content meeting will be around thinking about the surveys that we are asking of program completers and considering how we might revitalize the concept of local scoring. For those that are more oriented to graphics like myself, this is the sort of scope going forward. August through January, this is where we're taking up those focus areas, right? 1 through 5. And then, Christmas happens between, or the new year happens between meetings 4 and 5. But then what happens is we send initial recommendations to the commission for the February meeting. Now, this is not a draft recommendation. This is more of here is what the RDI TPA workgroup is thinking. We're going to share that with the commission for additional insight feedback, which we'll bring to you. And then that can help you during workgroup meeting 6 on February 26th and 7th, take all of these recommendations that we are generating, the sort of the consensus that we're starting to build around different ideas, the feedback from the commission, and we turn all of that into more firm recommendations. So we're going to start to move from a kind of a divergent phase to a more convergent phase. After that, we send them to the commission one more time. They give us their final feedback. We get one more bite at the apple. And hopefully by that point, we're just shining them and including perhaps some more definitions where we need to, perhaps including, I heard some ideas around including ideas for how to measure recommendations and thinking about progress measures. Those recommendations go to the commission in June. And then what happens, just to sort of play this all the way through, is that what is adopted by the commission is then given to staff to develop work plans. Right? So these are strategic plans based on your recommendations that are adopted by the commission. That is about how are we going to take these ideas and put them into action with measurable benchmarks of implementation. And then after that, according to 1263, we will be reporting annually until October 15th of 2028 about our progress. So that is the where do we go from here? And with that, I would like to give it back to the chairs.
Thank you so much. So what we figured would be most helpful is to spend a little bit of time looking at some documents that are located in the agenda and that you've received in hard copy as well. The first item is an article from the Learning Policy Institute. So that is there available for you to review, as well as the condition codes data that which has been provided, as well as an opportunity to revisit item 6A from our last meeting, as well as an opportunity to review the public comments which have been printed out for you. So at this moment, we're going to take some time to review those documents, and then we will come back together to share out your thoughts on those documents more. So did we want to pair up or just do it individually and then come back for discussion?
Sarah,
Okay.
you have somebody to talk to?
Yeah, that would be good. So in pairs or triads, we ask for you to review that information and then note any items that you want to bring forward. Okay? Let's proceed with that.
And just for clarification, they can access the 6A from the previous.
Yeah, so
What's the easiest?
if I may add just a couple of.
Yeah,
Sure,
of course.
absolutely.
Okay, so this item was requested last time to work group members wanted just another opportunity to surface additional data that was discussed in item 6A of last time. And so that was all of the passing rates. It was the condition codes for the Cal TPA, if you remember the presentations. So all of those slides are in your binders under the second tab, in case you want to revisit that. The new piece that was added are the condition codes from Ed TPA. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. And so then it's just another chance, one more pass at the data, most of which you've already taken a look at. In order to surface anything that you're seeing ahead of ahead of heading into the recommendations portion of today, where we're going to be revisiting the recommendation. So this could be these materials that you see here, 3A and 3A handout 1, 3A handout 2 are in your binders. And then the resources from October are also in your binders. If you want to access them digitally, you can go to the October RDI TPA meeting item, and it is available on 6A. So the idea is just to review and surface anything else, kind of like a last call for the data before we head into revisiting the recommendations that you brainstormed last time.
I'm sorry, I'm unclear. The materials that we are right now reviewing and talking about in our pairs or triads are exactly which materials in here?
So-
The PI article? That's like a 45-page article. I mean, how much time are we? Did I miss, like, we were sent this in advance to read? I'm sorry. Okay, my bad.
Can you clarify on what date this was sent to us?
It's not.
Yeah, because I don't remember receiving this
Oh,
article.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, well, that's what we're just looking at.
I can.
Yeah.
Thank you, because I thought I just missed it. I was like, I can't read a 45-page article.
Yeah, I'm also in the same.
You get 10 minutes.
I missed an email.
So glad.
I have missed an email.
Okay. I thought it was just me.
Oh, maybe.
Some of you got it, some of you.
And I
Oh, did you get it? Okay.
got it.
Oh, okay.
Got it.
Okay.
I have it as well. I already read it, so.
You want me to still find the email or?
That's good. It seems like it's gone through. I just don't remember seeing it either. It did go to it went to our commission email.
If you haven't pre-read it, pages 50 and 51 have conditions and recommendations based on the other 40 pages. That might be helpful.
And the quiz is multiple choice. It should be
Yeah.
straightforward. So
There's some throwaway ones.
not a performance assessment. Yeah.
So it's not this. It is.
It's right before the end. I think this is.
I have it.
Is there a spot there? Oh, no.
Well, I don't have the little.
You don't have the grant.
I have the.
Okay.
The shades of.
Oh, okay, but it's okay.
Is it Brighton?
He always brings.
Does it look low like?
It is low.
It is lower.
That was a hit or miss opportunity. Wasn't sure.
Covered anytime.
Wasn't sure that would come. I'm sure I could make that happen. The light that should rub me.
Oh, yeah, it is better. Yeah, that's way better. Thank you.
Will they stay on now? That's exciting. Don't tell IT I do that.
As opposed to.
That was funny.
The last email I have is. Actually, it's fine.
For this.
Yeah, 21.
Thank you for taking it easy.
Yeah. Well, and I've been looking a lot in the last few days, expecting.
And sending stuff.
Oh,
Oh, dang.
great.
Okay, I'll check with just the tech team.
So some are getting, but some aren't.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
CTC emails aren't.
I looked, yeah, I just re-looked over my emails and never got it.
Sometimes it's like, they usually, I didn't get it in my personal certain amount of time either, and usually I get it.
Go to the agendas.
That's what I did.
Oh, and then I can find.
That's smart. It's like the Thursday.
Yeah.
I reviewed it, or
Wait.
you've done that.
That's smart.
Wanted them all digitally.
Sometimes I don't get the little CTC email, or I can't check it because of the authentication doesn't work when I have my other stuff on.
No. Oh. Absolutely.
Devin, did you have a question?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, I was wondering for the document 3A, the condition codes, is there a similar data sheet for Cal TPA?
So the Devin, so the data was shared in the presentation from Cal TPA last time. If you look under the presentations from the October item, from
must have
last
missed
time,
that,
you'll
but I'll-
see the Cal TPA presentation has the condition codes in there.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So that I can report it to the person.
I was watching. We haven't gotten
It's really do it close to that, like a middleman.
we didn't know. So in about 5 minutes, we'll come back and do a group discussion. And the way we'll organize it is we'll start with item 6A resources. If there's anything you want to notice or call our attention to. And then we'll look at the LPI article and then follow that with the condition codes.
What's that?
The printed letters that were included as well. Never seen this meet.
It's quite nice.
Oh, you know it.
Gotcha.
There's comments at the end
I think I put things out of order.
that I had.
There's a lot of things.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Right, yeah.
I think institution uses that TPA. Yeah.
So because I
These are
can
copied together because this has nothing to do with. Wait, and then there was another one. Good thing.
I'm not living. Something that's funny. Something like.
South Africa. So I've been at this.
I didn't realize there was a connection. They're like.
13th year. One bus.
Like, no one explained to you what this is? Like even what.
Really don't have it. I'm gonna look at yours.
I mean, just the.
Right, exactly. And so I think, like, do you understand the assignment, right? Which is like explaining the prompt. Like, that is the number one thing you can do. And so like, RDIs are so interesting because they can actually do
Reason.
Well, they don't tell you that. They just say that.
Without-
Exam ask
intelligent thinking ahead, they create.
Some conditions.
or not. Just looks numbers and it's
Yeah, I did notice it.
kind
Like
of crazy.
the percentages for the submissions. And it's.
No, I agree. Here's not the reason.
Yeah.
Never is, because you could always have some sort of,
Every
thing,
year.
what if this happens, what if that happens, but. It's the consideration. It's something to think through, but it doesn't mean that you're going.
Yeah, still school hours.
Yeah.
The statistic.
Episode.
Highest exam.
So what is this? Yeah.
Sure.
Can be in-
That.
Okay. Sounds great.
Very strange.
It'd be helpful to know.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did have one.
All right. Have you had, raise your hand if you need more time. All right. So we will start off with item 6A as well as the condition codes were provided because those are two related items. So we'll start over here and we'll work around the table. So any comments related to item 6A or the condition codes?
Didn't actually get to the condition code discussion. We were still talking about the article, but just over my own personal reviewing of it, I was really drawn to, there are certain sections that have a normally large amount of condition codes. And I think some of them are kind of what we were talking here, that someone is not explaining the process. I don't know who that is, but someone is not, like video in test. So condition code F1, for example, video in test 2 has been edited and is not continuous and unedited with no interruption events. And this is post COVID as well. There's so many of this. So that means someone is not helping their students, right? To figure out that they need to turn in something as simple as a continuous and unedited with no interruption. So I think these were the ones that really stuck out to me, at least. And a lot of them are like, no response, D1, no response to commentary prompts or responses unrelated TPA tasks. It seems like someone would at their institution or their prep program should be helping them.
I was just left with also a question of, so they're going up, right? Like on both assessments that are widely used. Currently, they seem to be going up the condition codes percentage wise. Part of me was like, does anyone from CTC have an idea as to why that trend seems to be going? Is there data based on program, right? That's something else I was wondering. And what I mean by that is like credentialing route. So student, teacher, resident, internship. I do imagine representing an intern program, intern probably has higher. But I was just kind of curious as to the why it's going up.
And also the accountability factor for the institutions where it is going up, right? That's one concern that we should. How about over here?
So one thing, I was just thinking, overall, just with the environment some of these teachers are in that are getting sent, That's kind of going, you guys are talking about, like, are they being prepared? Are they not? What's the gap missing? Because if you're submitting stuff, but it's not related to what your video is about, why? Why? So where is that oversight to it? But I also question the district's responsibility. If you are an intern teacher or you are doing your student teaching in a school district, what is their responsibility to help you in preparing for the team? And I just keep coming back to that because again, it's the university. Yes, we all know we need more. Oh, that's your job. I guess not to be so siloed and like, oh, that's the university that they're going to prepare you. So what if I'm not? What if I'm this university that's in this paper and I'm not prepared because of whatever? We're short funding, we're short teachers, we're short professionals. So that's what I was kind of thinking in that. Just those environments our teachers are in. And then maybe do we have a component on how to submit on? Again, going back to, I think I had mentioned, do we create short YouTubes on, hey, you're going to submit this video and make sure this is clicked and make sure that is clicked and just make sure they're up to date and they're accessible.
How about from that group?
I was just kind of looking, so I don't represent anyone but myself. But I appreciate what's been said already, and a couple of things have resonated or kind of stood out to me as questions. I think on the condition code question, thinking about race in the ways in which Black students or Black candidates have the highest number or the highest percentage of condition codes in each of these years. So thinking about that, and it's also making me wonder about what was stated earlier in terms of the type of program that a person is going through and whether or not this data could be delineated by that. Like, do we see more condition codes like kinds of programs, not necessarily the program itself, but like an internship versus the residency versus, not that each of those are all programs are the same within those categories either. Just something to think about in trying to figure out and demystify why the differences in the percentage of condition code. There's another thing that I just don't always think about being in a credential program is what if the person's not in a classroom and they have to complete the TPA? So it's just something I think we should keep in mind in making sure that it's accessible and by all candidates.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. How about over here?
We were having a similar conversation to what you had noticed. I'll just add that kind of quickly skimming through these things. I mean, there's certainly not all these condition codes are the same to be treated equally. I mean, there are some that is sort of technical issues, which seems criminal to charge someone for having like a tech issue for resubmission. There's others where it just seems like there's really poor support or mentoring on the teacher education program's part, making too many edits in a video. That should be support that a candidate should have so they know the degree or the number of edits they should be making. And then there's some that I think are real genuine mistakes or learning opportunities. I was thinking about that and also maybe looking ahead and reading some of the recommendations that we had put forward in item 4A handout. And one of them was about, I guess, not requiring candidates to pay for condition codes. And I think it's definitely for some of these anyways, it seems like that should be a recommendation that we should push forward. That makes sense. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just struck by the condition code about the incompletes. When someone turns in an incomplete task and how the students of color were the largest percentage of that. And I found that absolutely fascinating. And I just would love to know why. I mean, is that a support thing? I mean, how are they not finishing? How's it being scored that it's saying that it's not finished compared to everybody else's? Because the statistics shows quite clearly that this is happening to students of color more than others.
You, Kathy? No.
I think these are amusing points you're making, and I wonder two. One is, do institutions get a table like this? Do any of you or institutions, Tori, do you get a table like this?
You don't get a table exactly like this. What you do get is a score report, if you know the candidate score reports. And you can look, there is, I think it's called Data Analyzer. I can't remember the name of the program. Results Analyzer. Thank you. That you can access to see certain statistics, but it does not look like this. I don't recall it looking at all like this. Right.
Is that just for your candidates or is it for every, like this is?
Yours candidates only.
This would seem to be, to me, very helpful for programs to know these are the kinds of things that are happening. That would be one thing. The second thing I would say, and I'm probably echoing what somebody else said, is that there may be a place in accreditation for us noting which programs. I'm sorry, I have a. I know, I do too. I just want to hear you. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to speak louder. There may be a place in accreditation where we note if programs are particularly problematic with respect to this. And there may be a way in which we can have programs to more responsibility, not the students.
Definitely.
I agree with what I've been hearing, and I think I would want to initiate sort of a split responsibility between the program sponsors and sort of a baseline, whether it's an online module or something, not to reinvent the wheel with every institution. I said program sponsors, I mean assessment sponsors, the 3 sponsors, that they should all develop a baseline sort of instruction guide, how to do this kind of a thing. And things like that certainly exist. It would be silly to ask every institution to do that same thing. So they should have something that would be easy for a candidate to follow about how to submit and how to avoid these codes. And then the split half of it is not to let the institution or the district off the hook, is then to support their candidates through that. What Tina just said about an institution being given the data about how many of their candidates fail to do little parts of this, I think is one piece of it that would inform them of what they need to do a better job. I'd also think that the commission ought to know institutions that have high failure rates on completion code kind of things, not just failure rates for the TPA altogether as an indicator of candidate quality, but condition code failures as an indicator of program failure in adequately supporting their candidates.
Thank you, Beverly.
Observations were on the codes. I was trying to just track the codes that there was just a high number of incidences in the 2022 to 2024, those 2 years. And it seemed like there's a lot of mention of technical issues and again, questioning whether or not we're charging for not being able to handle submissions or something to blame. And then there's just a lot of confusion or misunderstanding, like the criteria of what's required. So there may be some communication issues where it's just unclear to candidates. And then a couple of the codes, HG20, where you have to students work is being completed in a group without means of showing what individual students completed. Even for a veteran teacher, that's actually challenging to have evidence of someone working in a group, and then I have to like really make sure an individual is doing that. So there might be some difficulty with understanding how to handle these challenging situations. And then also in H1, not fully clear, but the portions not in English, the required translation transcript must be included. That's, as a teacher, I'm like, that's a lot of extra work to do. So that was just a thought there. And then my last thought was noticing that the numbers, overall, the numbers are increasing of candidates applying and attempting. But it is the level or the rate of support the same as the level we're telling people to come and they're going, but are we able to accommodate now this new influx of candidates? Right amount of support.
Thank you so much.
So we talked a bit, but before we did that, I wanted to look at the comparison with the percentage of Ed TPA condition codes with Cal TPA condition codes. And I don't think it fully hit me last time, the difference in condition codes between cycle 1 and cycle 2 for Cal TPA, which was significantly higher. I did notice that it seemed like the rates for cycle 1 and Ed TPA were comparable. But then just as we've been talking, I'm wondering about a breakdown for Cal TPA, like we have for Ed TPA, types of condition codes.
I think I just want to reiterate what was already said by some of my colleagues, especially Matt, that these are not treated equally. And I think there needs to be analysis of which of these condition codes are related to some of the submission requirements of the assessment versus which ones would be on a program candidate for. And the question about transcription, I know received condition codes for that because primarily secondary teacher candidates, bilinguals, not officially designated bilingual content placements, but who are teaching bilingually in those content placements. So it creates extra labor on them to have to do transcription. Also, they feel like it's a bit of a gray area because it's not officially designated as a bilingual class, but they're doing some instruction in Spanish and some in English.
Thank you. Vanessa.
So I did read through these earlier this week, and I noted some similar things in that there were a lot of condition codes that seemed burdening of the candidate and out of their hands. And one of the notes I wrote was, could these codes have been relieved by mandating that IHEs have an orientation each semester prior to implementing the TPAs? And after hearing everyone else, maybe using condition codes as a data set to reference in their orientation. And why is it impacting students of color the most is my biggest question as I was highlighting all of these numbers.
Thank you. Hey, okay, so as I'm going through these condition codes, I just have to laugh because I told you guys all, I took the TPA and I took the Cal TPAs a year ago. And so I did get a condition code, and I agree with you. It was totally criminal. I was so upset when I got my condition code. And I'm going back to what we've been talking about with formative assessments and like this whole like hit submit and it's pass or fail. I'm like, if you get one on technical difficulties or like one of the condition codes, like it was blank, obviously someone uploaded or not obviously, but it could be most likely someone uploaded and didn't upload properly. That's a technical difficulty. That's something that I feel like you should have like a 2-week window, a month window where you get a feedback like, hey, by the way, you submitted, this is blank, this is blank, this is blank. By the way, your video got cut off. Those are things that I feel like you should be able to have a candidate give a second chance for. And then I thought it was interesting what you guys all said about the Institute taking responsibility for preparing candidates. And because I went through the whole program, I thought my program, even though I hated it, did a pretty good job, honestly. They couldn't obviously use the same platform as the Ed TPA, but they used, I think at one point we had Blackboard and we had another one, but we had to upload videos and went through the same exact process. And, we got feedback from our professors and, all these great things that we did that emulated the experience. However, when you're submitting on your own, it's completely different. You're on a different platform. You are by yourself. You can't ask your professor, hey, can you check this and make sure my video uploaded? Can you make sure my face is on the screen? Can you make sure that this, I submitted assessment. I still wanted to argue it, but then I ended up taking the Ed TPA instead of retaking the Cal TPA. But like it said, assessments were fine. Instead of work samples, I submitted assessments. I have a feeling it's because the students' hands weren't written, like it wasn't a written assessment. It was my scoring. That was the student's assessment. But anyways, like these are things these technical things, but again, you don't have a professor that you could say, hey, can you look at this, or them giving you feedback. So it brings me back to what we've been talking about, this whole process needing to be formative, that you should be able to get it back and say, hey, look at these condition codes, fix them, submit again. You know what I mean? Instead of, oh, look, these condition codes and you failed. Please submit another $300 and retake the whole thing again. So that's where I am with my feelings about this.
Can I just thought of one more thing as you
Go
were
for it.
saying it. Some of my current residents have complained that in asking questions, their professors are worried about giving too much information and are told, refer that to the handbook, go back to the Ed TPA handbook. And that seems like an unreasonable burden. All of these condition codes seem like an unreasonable burden to put onto the candidates.
I was just gonna also add, so you're 100% right? Like from an institution point of view, I can't see what the candidate's actually submitting on the platform. I can see like the embedded stuff that we support them in before, but I can never actually see like the actual submission, which sometimes leads to confusion. And then me having to talk to like commission staff that then talk to Pearson and create a game of telephone to kind of drill down to what's going on. But the other thing I want to call out is at TPA, I counted them. There's 55 condition codes. So going back to this idea of what is, if any of us as teachers, as educators went into a classroom and had 55 different ways of making it so that a student wouldn't succeed, I don't think any commission staff would want to give a credential to us because that's not good practice, right? And so it goes back to what I was thinking at the end of our last meeting of the fact, like, shouldn't this test be emulating what we want our teachers to be doing in the classroom? Should we not be modeling with this test the best practices for what an assessment looks like in a classroom? And maybe that's chunking, and maybe that's like, there's a bunch of different things that could happen to make that happen. But to me, counting those condition codes, like the amount of them, and they keep adding every year. I don't know if people know that, but like, because there's new ways that, oh, we found another, that to me speaks to like, is this appropriate for beginning teachers? Is this what we want our teachers to be doing based off of the model that we are providing for them?
Have our online people?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Are they ahead of me? Go ahead.
Did someone here have a comment? I see your hand up.
Yes. So for me, as I look through this information, I can't help but wonder how much assessor error contributes to the TPA results. I mean, internally, not expecting this to be public information, but does any organization keep data on individual assessors and their individual assessment outcomes, you know, their pass rates, their fail rates, whether or not they're assigning too many condition codes? And is there any way to identify specific assessors whose performance may need to be reevaluated, who may need to go through a recalibration phase or maybe retrained? I agree with everything that's been said, but I think a lot of it is really left to assessor error. So I'm wondering, is that data kept? And does anyone look at that if it is?
I believe that, yes, I think that every assessor is evaluated or is monitored, but I don't have the specifics on that. I'm wondering if there's someone from evaluation systems here who does, or if Amy Rising, oh, Lori, would you like to come answer the question or stand and answer the question?
I'm happy to. I'll scoot up just so that those online can hear me. Do you mind if I sit next to you? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Jesus, I might snack on them if you do. Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for letting me answer this. Scorers for both the Cal TPA program and the Ed TPA program, their scoring is monitored on a continual basis. So they are and published. I can't speak for the Cal TPA program as clearly, so I'll speak for Ed TPA. That's my program. Their inter-rater reliability is published each year. We put out an administrative report, and so their inter-rater reliability is made public. The other thing that is being monitored in the background, in addition to inter-rater reliability, is also the scoring supervisors checking on things like the number of condition codes, you know, all of kind of the things that you've talked about. So yes, for Ed TPA, I can absolutely say that. My understanding, again, Cal TPA is the operational partner is evaluation system. So it's very much the same process as well for that.
I've asked if Amy Rising, who I believe is in the Zoom, can join us also to speak on behalf of Cal TPA. I don't see her yet as a panelist.
She is.
You are a panelist.
Can
I
you
just
turn
don't see-
on your camera? Amy, can you turn on your camera and then mute your?
There we go.
Thank you.
Did you hear the question?
I did. Can you
Okay, great.
see me? I
Yes.
cannot. I can't see you. Well, that's all right. I'll just pretend that I can see you. Hello, everyone. Yes, great question. And I'm sorry that we haven't had time to explain to you the quality control measures we have, as well as that TPA, as Lori's talking about, in place for assessors. So we have a very rigorous assessor training process. All assessors have to calibrate. They can only score for so long before they have to recalibrate. We watch every score decision they make. We have a 3-tiered assessor scoring process in place so that if there is any question on the part of the assessor, they can move it up the chain to the next level and then to finally what we call lead assessors. And then sometimes as commission staff, we look at things. So absolutely, we track our inter-rater reliability. We track this over time. We have all kinds of requirements for our assessors. For example, they can only score for a day, and if they're scoring more than that, they get locked out. If they're scoring not enough, they get locked out. If they're scoring too fast, they get locked out. We have all kinds of measures that we carefully attend to make sure that scoring is as equitable as possible. And that brings me then to condition codes. Condition codes have been developed to provide equitable scoring to candidates. And that's really what it does. It makes sure that when we're making score judgments, when assessors are making score judgments, that they're looking at the same body of evidence that has been asked for. We don't want assessors making judgments about things that they don't have, right? So, we are always reporting condition code outcomes and working with our programs on which condition codes programs are getting and providing strategies and all kinds of online supports around how to address condition codes that are showing up across program types and across, sort of the state multiple times a year. So we're watching it pretty carefully. I would like to add one other thing. I just want to throw out there. There was a question asked about why are some of these condition codes increasing? I just want to remind everyone that we had 2 years of a fee waiver in place where candidates did not pay to take the assessment. And we saw a very interesting, probably unintended consequence sometimes of that, where we saw very incomplete things submitted. And we, who knows why that happened. But I just want to remind all of you that there's one anecdotal thing I can share, which is that some programs would say, all TPAs have to be submitted by X date in order to pass this course. So things would be submitted that were not complete sometimes. So just want to put that out there as well.
Thank you, Amy. I saw another hand online. I think it was Clara.
Can't call it.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to ask Amy a clarifying question, if that's okay, related to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tina.
Since I wanted to ask Amy a clarifying question. Yes. Amy, you said that you reach out to programs after they've received a number of condition codes. Is that what you all do as assessment sponsors? Do you reach out to the programs and discuss condition codes with them?
Yes.
No,
so we look at our data quarterly 4 times a year.
Okay.
And we work with our program coordinators of each program. During the pandemic, it was 4 times a year. We've come back to twice a year. So we work with them in January. We work with them again in June. And we share all the data and the results across the state. And we share the patterns and trends for condition codes with programs. And we talk specifically about what condition codes are we seeing and what can be done to address them. And if we're seeing a pattern or a trend that is really either something new or different, we have direct communication to our program coordinators about, this is something that we're seeing going on. Please make sure that you're working with your candidates to address this because, we don't want condition codes. We don't want to have them. And somebody asked about videos. There's a lot of video support on our website as well. So a lot of that is available.
And are these condition codes reported to CTC outside of your office?
Outside of my office, reported to the commission.
Yeah.
I believe in our last annual report, we included condition codes, and we're happy to continue to do that. And certainly,
No, they were not.
I think we did in our first,
yes, in our, oh, sorry, excuse me, you're right, Mary, in our first report, we did.
and we are planning to look at how we can bring them into the annual report that is currently scheduled for presentation to the commission in December as well. So the discussion of condition codes and how to address that is very live and real and serious.
Right.
Thank you. I'll respond in terms of what we do with Ed TPA for condition codes. So we also, once or twice a year, we provide to each state. So we meet with California, Ed TPA coordinators. In a meeting, we share the information on the most frequent condition codes, walk through what those mean. What we've done in the past couple years is you have seen an increase in the number of condition codes. They aren't an increase in the sheer volume of them, like looking for new ways to kind of say you didn't your TPA. What we actually did was took some of the condition codes that were, I would call them vague. It might have just said incomplete artifact, which leads a candidate to have no idea which artifact, like, well, which one am I supposed to redo? What task should I upload? Did I miss my planning commentary or was it my instruction commentary? So what we did was we took those vague condition codes and broke them out into the different tasks in an effort to provide more clarity to candidates. But yes, we do share the data with programs. As Kathy mentioned, the condition code data is in Results Analyzer. It doesn't look like the file that you have. However, what we do also provide each February and August are biannual summary reports that have data for each individual EPP, gets their own data, and it does include information on condition codes. They also get the aggregate state data report, so they can
give us 5 minutes. Are we 5 minutes?
Yes.
We try to reconnect the Wi-Fi.
We're reconvened, okay. I remember what I was gonna say, because it was following a comment of Ben's, although I was taken by the sidetrack we took about the quality and the equity among assessors and how much of this is assessor error. But I'm also struck that when we refer to this issue as condition codes, that name in itself sounds like it's some technical thing that, you know, is like a complicated technical thing is unfair to the candidate and it's, you know, outside of the assessment in itself. But I'm also, and hearing that there are 55 of them certainly sounds like way too many and way too technical. But I'm also struck by, forget who said it up there, the fact that, you know, any assessment needs a floor, needs a set of minimums, a set of something that you have to do this in order to have this be considered a valid assessment and equitable among others. So we can't really get rid of what we're calling condition codes because there has to be something that says you didn't complete the assignment. You didn't complete it in a way that we can make a judgment on it. And so the fact that there's 55 and there's, which is way too many and complex, and the messages aren't clear, and maybe the preparation isn't clear, is I think what we need to address. But the fact that they exist at all, they have to exist. There has to be a standard, you know, for them. 55, yikes.
Well, having that data, I find is certainly helpful in identifying the pattern for sure. And I would love to just emphasize what Tina said, which is, he asked the question, do institutions receive a report in the similar format that we saw today? And I don't know if we do or we don't, but I will keep my eye on that very, very much so moving forward. All right. Kathleen, did you have a comment to share?
At this point, I think I would be echoing a great deal of what has been shared, but I do think that something that has become more apparent to me since the last meeting and having time to think and process is that we definitely are working with at least one corporate entity that financially benefits from error coding. And I don't know that there's any kind of positive way to spin that. I know that no ethical company would ever error code on purpose, but we haven't really discussed the financial impact in terms of what those actual error codes mean in dollars for a company that does this essentially for profit, and how that might be shifted in the future to really support early career teachers. And I think I wasn't brave enough last meeting to say it. Maybe over Zoom I'm braver. But I think it's worth mentioning that we do have a corporate entity that's partnering and could be financially benefiting from error codes, whether inadvertently or inadvertently. And the flip.
Thank you for raising that concern, Kath. But at a later point. So.
Yeah, so two things. One, I saw some folks online wanting to get in the conversation, and you know, we will have time for public comment for each item on the agenda. So Clara, I apologize if you're raising your hand. Oh, well, for the record, we saw you and we weren't ignoring you. It's just that we have to make sure those go to the public comment section. Second, you know, to your question about can we reconsider this? Yes, absolutely. The whole point about this, of doing the data discussion now, was to sort of refresh the discussion from last time that led to those initial recommendations. And so in 4A, which is coming up after this, you're gonna have a chance to look at a few things. Well, I'll frame it later. Answer is yes. You're gonna have that
in 4A.
In 4A. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. So with that, we will move on to the LPI article. Any thoughts about that article would like to share? I must say, I just found it intriguing that all over the nation, people are having conversations over the old assessment system and asking questions about how we can shift the system to work for our intended purposes, which I know that is one of the reasons why we're here. So I found that to be quite intriguing. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to what you just said about intended purposes, because I'm still confused at our intended purpose of the TPAs. Like, we had talked about it, like, what is the purpose of the TPA? Like, what is the real fake surface level, deep level of the TPA? Like, is it to truly prepare teachers and know that when they pass the TPA, yay, you're ready to step into the classroom? Is it really meant to be a gateway? Like, this is our last chance to stop those people from becoming teachers if they're not meant to be teachers. You know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose of the TPA? Like, I really want to know the purpose of it, like the real true purpose of it. Like, what does it stand for? What do we want from it?
Would you like to speak to that?
Well, I was just digging out this piece from this handout from item 2A, day 1 of the second meeting, which is the table we created that takes down the statute that establishes it. And I think we'd have to look back to the law, and I think that everything you just said finds a place in, which is that it needs to be educative. It's when the law talks about it, there being many formative opportunities for candidates to learn what they need to know in order to do well and to reach a level of performance established by the commission. Level of performance meaning it's also summative. Formative means educative. Summative means you don't get into the profession without a recommendation from your program, and your program must use this as part of the information to decide whether you're ready to teach. So that was all spun into the law 25 years ago, roughly. Some of us were around then. Beverly, it looks to me like you just raised your hand. Would you like to?
Just want to add on the risk of knows more about this than Barry, but the other big purpose of TPA is not just about the individual candidate and making sure they're ready to teach. It's about program quality and public assurance that up until that point, everything about determining that a program was doing a good job of preparing people were all about the process, the documents that they would say, here's what we did, look at this, and you can see we're doing a good job. And there was a feeling that we also needed to look at outcomes about the candidates that came from these programs. And so the other purpose of TPA is to say, you do all of these things that meet the preparation standards, but are your candidates truly ready? And so part of accreditation is programs, the CTC looks at their TPA results, programs that have very poor results, candidates who can't pass in the aggregate, the TPA, somehow they're not doing what they say they're doing in their document. So it's not just about the individuals and are they ready to teach, it's also public assurance of program quality.
So it also, and I can tell you back in the time, a similar review to this 95, 96, 97, I'm sorry, it's been a long time, but yeah, the question is, what are the hallmarks of a profession in terms of preparation, et cetera? In medicine, you must complete medical school, you must pass your medical boards, you must demonstrate that you can do a variety of things. To become a nurse, there's a certification and licensing assessment. To become a hairdresser, it's a 2-day assessment, performance assessment, where you have to perform everything that a salon specialist would perform. And there wasn't anything like that in teaching. So at the time that the commission, the legislature, our work group of that day, the Senate Bill 1422 work group said, we think it's critical that we move beyond just hearing reports from programs and interviewing their faculty and their students. We need to have something that we're all orienting to, which is a performance assessment that shows that you know what you need to know and you can do the fundamental task of plan, teach, assess, reflect, apply. So that's where it came from. And the goal really was that it be educative, that it be informative for the commission, as Beverly's just said, and for accreditation purposes, programs held accountable for how their candidates do in some way, but that it also really be educative for the candidate and a part of the licensing decision. I don't know whether we're answering your question, but tossing that out.
And I
Getting clearer. Thank you.
And then I think it was Vanessa and then.
So in reading this article or this report, the two things stood out to me as kind of just a thought as we're going through this process. And the first is the design principle or their idea of positive instructional impact. And like all of the comments that we found is that nobody believes that the TPAs have a positive instructional impact. And so really guiding our thought process on how the TPAs can be designed as a positive impact on the instructional abilities of each of the candidates that are taking this. And then one of the quotes says, walk the line between aspirational and achievable. What are our aspirations for our future educators and what are we actually wanting to see them perform and assess? And what is actually achievable for the candidates where it's not so much of a burden, where everybody's complaining about time and money that is put into the TPAs. So those are just two things that stood out to me as we're thinking about where to go from here.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to Beverly, Mary, and Linda's conversation about, and it goes back to this on page 44 or page 50, depending on which one you're looking at. This kind of relationship between state agencies, local education agencies, and local communities is unproductive and often does not reflect within the SEA, yada, yada, yada. It also says experienced state policies being done to them rather than with the input of practitioners. What I just heard is the complete opposite of that. Is that once we have these TPAs, we have taken all the input away from the local agency and now put it in the hands of the state and say, oh, well, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, right? Now you have to live up to our standard. And it's kind of now taking a lot of the responsibility away from the local agencies, where it sounded like in 1996, 1997, whenever that was, before it changed, that it was in the hands of the local agencies. And according to this article, for something to be a relevant assessment system, it has to be local. And as long as it's corporatized like it is now, where there are 55 ways to to not pass without even being scored, right? And then you have to pay. Can you imagine in your classroom, going back to your point, if there was 55 ways that I could fail someone without even scoring their document, right? And then I'd have to tell them, well, now you got to pay me. You got to pay me money to come back to my classroom. I can't even imagine like comprehending that or whatever that is. But what I just heard here was it's taking all the agency away from the local, right? Maybe that's hyperbole, but it's taking some of the power away from the local agency and putting it in the hands of the state. And if we're trying to bridge this gap and make this relationship better, I think there's an issue, and that's always going to be an issue. That's always going to be something that stands in the way, that there's this outside big brother type of entity telling us that we can't be a teacher unless we live up to this particular standard.
So can I ask you a question? Sure. Are you suggesting that teachers should not be licensed by the state?
No, I'm suggesting that I read in this article that was presented to me that has said that it was important for local people to feel like something was not being done to them. And if we are going through a TPA process that is removed from a local education agency, which it is at the CTC level, the Sacramento level, or at the NTPA or whatever, then it will always be something that's done to us. And that could create a barrier into what we're doing here, trying to redesign the process and making it more beneficial and educative for future educators.
So they should still be licensed by the state.
I'm saying in this article right here,
No,
on behalf of Election Day, I'll try to be my best politician ever with the information that I will post.
Role reversal here.
Yes,
It's my job.
of course, I believe there has to be some manner of knowing that these teachers can teach, right? But I'm just saying what I'm reading here seems to be in opposition of what I just heard. And that's what I'm reading up.
And there is feedback that's collected from the field. All of that happens, but you know, I know that we don't have time to get into the weeds of all of that right now. I appreciate that. Adam, Patricia, then Tori.
So just to add on to the discussion that you added on to, you know, and going back into code, there is a very clear purpose for accountability and programming. Right? That is baked very closely into it. So ensure that the aggregated results of the assessment for groups of candidates who have completed a credential program are used as one source of information about the quality and effectiveness of the program. And this part now added by 1263, the commission shall report the number of programs with low pass rates and assist these programs to use evidence-based strategies to support candidates to pass the assessment. So there's the accountability piece, right? But for accountability to be in place, there has to be some sort of mechanism that connects the outcomes of the assessment to tangible change in the program. And so that line needs to be crystal clear if we're meeting this part of the statute. To the second question, you know, and this is to your question, Linda, what is this thing supposed to do? Is this the thing that screens candidates that we don't want in classrooms? Like, what is the purpose of that? I think that it is absolutely clear for this work group no matter what it is or currently is, the charge to this work group is to ensure that teaching performance assessments are valid and authentic, formative in nature, embedded in preparation, and inform program improvement through the accreditation system. So 1263 is crystal clear on the charge to this group in terms of what your recommendations are intended to make the assessment, regardless of its current state.
I'm sorry, you said crystal clear and I got lost.
I love it.
So can you say it in layman's language without repeating that? I'm sorry.
So in terms of the purposes of assessment, 44320.4 says, you know, for this work group, it's to deliver recommendations for this assessment to be formative in nature. Formative in nature. That's what's in the statute.
Thank you.
That's not all that's in the statute. But
We're in the statute.
There's
I guess I have two comments, and like, yes, so Linda, great question, and exactly, Adam, it has it in there. So I'm wondering, where is that disconnect where candidates don't see that? what do you mean? What is it for? So they're missing some kind of connection between the two. So I've never taken the Ed TPA or the Cal TPA, but I did do national boards. And one thing I put in my notes and reading the article was like what data is and what data is going back to that assessment. What is being taught and in our programs that tell teachers what use this data this way, or are they being taught, or are they led by a school lead who just tells you like this is what we do here and this is how it's done. There is no critically thinking about the data or what data you're collecting to help benefit your students in your classroom. And again, I know in working in a school district, you can have one school and you can have so many needs just in one classroom. So how are we preparing teachers to teach to those student populations that are diverse? And it's natural. And I know, so again, and my bias is being a teacher of almost 20 years, various schools, various settings. So I can't even imagine being a brand new teacher straight out of teacher prep in this environment we're in after COVID and the expectations they have for young teachers or beginning career teachers, whatever the new language is for these student populations. And Joshua, I mean, I love check and balance. My life is check and balance. So if these systems, assessment systems are designed to be that check and balance, how are our programs preparing teachers? And let's make sure they know that they are being held accountable.
So it's Tori, Beverly, and then Kathy.
Just going back to the LPI report, I found a couple things in here that might be helpful in our discussion as a work group. One is table 10 on starting on page 31. I think this maybe goes a little bit to what asked about in the report. Says that states consider specific intended impacts and needed shifts, and the table suggests some potential things that a state might seek to do through the performance assessment. I know we have statute governing that, but there might also be some suggestions in our group about making it valid and authentic or formative. And then finally, the very end of the report, find the page here, page 44, system conditions. This might also be something to consider recommendations about because the system, the assessment. Joshua was asking, I think, about agencies. And the thing that stood out to me on about the state education agencies was that it required reimagining the role of the agency in partnership with local communities. And the thing that I think we might want to consider is how we're taking into account the needs of our local communities and what they need from the teaching profession as we're.
Thank you, Tori.
Piecing together, as different people make different comments. And you mentioned, I think you're reading from the one of our documents about the purpose being a positive instructional impact. And I think that like right now in today's context, we might look at TPA and say, no, it's not doing that. But again, because of my long history with doing this work, I remember at the time, what was seen and needed very much resulted in a positive instructional impact. Joshua, you were talking about sort of weren't your words, but the cookie cutter loss of local agency and control over input into a program. We are so regulated. I mean, it's not just that programs of preparation have accreditation standards, program standards. We have the California standards for the teaching profession. We have the TPEs. We have curriculum standards and frameworks. We have all of these things that in that day and age, there was not a feeling of trust that every program in the state that was putting out teachers was adequately preparing them to address all of those things, to know the standards for the teaching profession and the frameworks and the content standards and everything else. And so it was very much needed as a positive instructional impact to bring programs more in alignment with all of the things that groups of educators who developed, for example, the TPEs and the CSCP felt that teachers needed to know and be able to do. And so it was a way of ensuring programs were really doing that. And I think the big sticking point we have right now that I hear, maybe I'm wrong because I was stuck on this last time too, was the issue of formative. That TPA has come over the years to such an endpoint for preparation. And it's seen as an endpoint, and so it's not seen as formative at all because the programs are already shaped by all of these other things I was talking about. But it's an endpoint. But TPA in its origination was not supposed to be an endpoint. It was supposed to be a bridge from preparation into early years of what was then BITSA and is now induction. And it was supposed to be, took an assessment of this candidate at this point in time, but they weren't done growing and learning as a professional. And it was meant to carry over into their early years and support their mentoring and support and everything else they were getting then. In fact, believe it or not, originally it was proposed that there would be a second TPA at the end of induction. That didn't get formally carried out, but that was a recommendation because these assessments were meant to help guide development all the way through. To me, the biggest piece that I think we're missing in TPA, if I could wave a wand and do one thing to fix TPA, it would be to make that connection better, to make, because what we've done is we've just relied on the candidate. We've said the candidate, here you get your TPA results. Now, when you get hired, carry this forward to the district and show them what you're not good at. Nobody does that, and there's no connection to it. And I think TPA could return to being formative if we thought of the whole career span of a teacher and not preparation as an ending point.
Thank you, Beverly. Kathy.
Yeah, so to respond to you, Patricia, and kind of piggybacking on what you're saying is that it truly has not been operationalized to be formative.
Right.
That's the gist of it. It's, kind of why we're here and trying to do a new charge, because again, it has been put at the end of programs. And, one format in the Ed TPA, it is an all or nothing. So that's problematic because that's at the end. And, it has set up to be a licensure requirement because again, it was supposed to be reflective of making sure that programs had a similar quality, that candidates were getting access to all of the, to equitable training because everywhere is so different. But it just has not been operationalized to be formative. Why we kind of have to fix this.
We've got about 15 minutes left. And less than 15 minutes. And so I'm going to ask you if somebody makes a comment and you're in agreement, that you not reiterate it. Thank you so much for clarifying that. We will have an opportunity to make additional recommendations for A. So now we will, are there any other comments regarding the article? Linda and Vanessa. Linda, did you have a comment?
Oh, I did. I'm hoping I'm not repeating. So I was just thinking of what you said, Mary, earlier about how institutes are taking the recommendation and using TPAs as part of their recommendation. So if they're using TPAs, can an institute say, it's okay you failed the TPA because you got all these beautiful condition codes. I still think you're wonderful and I still think you deserve a credential. I will still recommend you. Can an institute do that?
Well, so that's a question, right? And
That is a question. I'm asking you directly.
Not rhetorical, but I'm happy to jump right into this. It sounds to me like they're doing it. And so there's nothing so far in the law or the commission's policy or standards or requirements for this beyond what the law says that forbids that. And here's where you come in. All right. If you have something to say about condition codes, and I came in for half the group had already said something about it when I came in, so I didn't get to hear what all of you had to say about it, but I heard some very interesting thoughts about, sorting condition codes, having programs make decisions, do some kind of check-in with a candidate before they submit, clarifying for faculty what they may do, what they must do in supporting candidates for it. I mean, there are a lot of things that you could dig in on and recommend that the commission take up in the future that to minimize, if not eliminate, condition codes as a factor in somebody passing. You could take up the issue of charging candidates to rescore something they submitted but left something blank, or, submitted a video of their cat. I hear that as that's an urban myth, but I don't think anybody ever did. But You know, if they got the wrong video when they upload it, they shouldn't have to pay $300 and redo it again. Maybe that's what y'all think. Make a recommendation about it. The purpose of this meeting and this group is to identify issues with implementation and design that do not comport with the intent of the law and are making it very challenging for candidates in ways where the juice is not worth the squeeze. So you have every right to make the recommendations as a group here to take up something about condition code. And I'm really hopeful that you will. Commission, I think, wants to hear from you. I think they share a concern at a high level, and when they hear the report and get to dig in on condition codes themselves in December, you know, we may be singing in harmony. You never know, right here in this room. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that there are numbers. So the piece about programs using TPAs as one source of data before they recommend a candidate for a credential is written right into 44320.2, which is the originating statute. The commission also has a responsibility here in 44320.2 in item D5 that requires the commission to establish and implement appropriate standards with satisfactory performance in assessments that are established pursuant to this section. So it requires the commission to establish a passing standard for this assessment. 1263 required that we also establish a secondary passing standard, which provides this grace space for candidates who, for some reason, got close but not quite there. So a program could add to their knowledge of the candidate's readiness, and that would carry them over. That's also in statute. There is also in statute a piece that says that the program, to the extent possible, the performance assessment shall be designed to provide formative assessment information during the preparation program for use by the candidate, instructors, and supervisors for the purpose of improving the teaching knowledge, skill, and ability of the candidate. So it has a passing standard built into the law. It means it's summative. It has an expectation that it is built into it, our formative experiences that inform the candidate, the program, and also the commission. There are other places that do that. And then in the next section of code, 44320.3, a requirement that we add a literacy performance assessment. And there's no doubt about whether that's formative or summative, because that replaces RICA. So it has a summative component and quality to it, which again, I think I may have said this at the first meeting. I think this statute is beautiful. I think it creates some really important policy tensions, and the commission is the right place to sit with experts like yourselves from the classroom, from teacher preparation, from whatever walk, to struggle with how do you make something formative for candidates and have a passing standard that is meaningful and have appropriate grace space around that to accommodate any error in measurement and recognize that literacy is a key priority of the state. And now this has got to be a vehicle for it. And it's one of the hardest things we could have ever done. Far easier to write and establish and adopt a RICA. Far easier, cheaper, everything about that is easier, except for candidates who don't do well on it, particularly candidates of color. So it's a struggle. And I think the questions and recommendation areas that 1263 put in front of this group and in front of the commission are critical at this moment to help bring the feedback and the insight that we're getting, and more will come, I'm certain that it will, to the proposition that performance assessments live, they exist, they're still subject to every provision of this law, where later today and tomorrow we're going to get right into what does it mean to embed it, which is where forming may be occurring. It's required to be occurring. Please God, I hope somebody says it's occurring there at the local level, but you know, that's what we're doing here. So I don't know whether this is, I think I way over answered that question, but I hope you didn't forget what my answer to that question is.
So we have one more comment from Vanessa. So now it is time for public comments. So the public, we will now open for public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Right.
All right, so we are going to move to item 4A, which is our opportunity to discuss our initial recommendations and do a prioritization of each of the focus areas, which recommendations we feel most strongly about. We're going to use a mechanism called Poll Everywhere to do it. We used the brainstorming session from our last meeting to generate the different brainstormed ideas. So each page will have those on it. But please keep in mind, this is a preliminary list. The list can be added to. If we find that something is a low priority, it could also be removed from the list. So this is all very fluid. Would staff like to speak to the process and how it's been laid out?
So you have multiple sources to draw upon for this activity. I think we'll have a short another sort of short and a review session, and then moving into taking the existing recommendations, adding, subtracting, and then we'll do a round of Poll Everywhere kind of consensus, see what the degree of consensus for each is. So for the first piece, you have, they're all the 4A handouts. So these are the definitions, right? So this is when you took all of the different parts of statute and you built definitions. So when we're talking about valid and authentic or formative in nature, what do we mean? You built this document. You also have public comments that have been shared in your binders. And so you have additional resources that have been sent in by the public. And then you also have a document that looks like this. It's the item 4A handout, RDI TPA recommendations for focus area 1 from the October 2024 meeting. And what this is this is from the brainstorm, the whip around that we did last time. And so this is sort of consolidated into a list of 16 existing recommendations. These are all preloaded in a survey device that we'll do in real time here. And I'll explain that process probably after we have some time to kind of review these documents. Based on the discussion we had, do the recommendations that we had way back in the month of October kind of really get to what we need for this focus area in order to execute the charge? Are there modifications we need to make? And then we'll sort of figure out how we consolidate all that. And then we'll do a round and try out our voting protocol, see how that works. With the caveat, with the reminder that nothing is ever closed. And so if we want to wordsmith, if we want to combine, if we want to separate, if we want to do all of that stuff, we're going to have opportunities to do that at future meetings. So the first step, and I believe we're going to have a breakout room for our friends online, for Kathleen and Devin, and Danette. The first step is going to be to take some time with the Noble partner, review the handout. Oh, sorry. I also included the Google form responses for those of you that submitted those. And if you sent them to me, I put them in on your behalf, and I noted that where I did. So these are the resources you have. What do you think? Co-chairs? 10 minutes just to refresh the thinking. And then we'll go to proposing new modifications or subtracting from this list of 16. That makes sense? Wonder, are we good? Is it clear? Because I know. All right. So now you have your time.
Any new ideas will retain too.
Yep.
It's stapled to the 4A handout.
Ben and Kathleen are actually open to the room. You guys can just join the Zoom one. That's one discuss with each other. Audience from the other public, you guys can either stay in the main room or you guys can go to the main one. Okay, can you repeat the whole thing? I'm sorry.
All right, Devin, our group is forever immortalized in history because they changed it to credential candidate. So that's what we were talking about. Yes, awesome. Okay. So I'm going to throw this out there for number 6 for the 16 on item 4A. Mary said something about the secondary passing standard. We were talking about bringing back in the local control again. That if going back to the corporatization of the TPA, if there is a secondary passing standard, why can't we just, and that's acceptable, then why can't we just maybe leave that as an option for the program? Do you want to participate in the TPA process at all? If there is a secondary passing standard, because as I understand it, the secondary passing standard then goes back to the teacher preparation program. And I know Devin may know some about this too as well. I think in our small groups, we were talking about this. Is it a possibility then that we don't even have to worry about all this stuff? They can still take the TPA if they want, but can we put it in the control of the local teacher prep programs to say, well, you can go down this path, which is a TPA oriented path, or you can go down this path, which would be a locally scored path, like the secondary path.
There's still a TPA, just a locally scored TPA?
Either or, is what I'm saying. Because if it's already going to if you're already paying the $300 to fail potentially, but then you can go through a secondary passing standard and then still pass, then what was the point of going through the TPA process? Because they obviously learned what they need to learn in the teacher education program if they pass the secondary passing standard. Does that make sense? So then what was the point of having an outside for-profit company score the effectiveness of a California teacher when we were already capable of doing it ourselves?
So
throwing it out there, that's all.
Responder. Okay. Are we?
I think you can respond in the voting, like you just vote me down.
So
What is this guy doing?
Trying to figure out how to
like the whole thing.
From like the secondary passing standard is like, it's another cut score. It's like a point or two. It's not even that big of a difference really.
But it is a big difference because I mean, somebody's gonna get
One, yeah, it's like you either fail or you don't.
exactly. That's high stakes. That's what we're trying to get away.
And then of course, the preparation program has to basically show all the things that, you did in order to say that, yes, this person actually does meet the standard, even though they had that one point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, we could move away from it's still being scored. You know what I'm saying?
And they have to
Still
fall within
score.
standard error measurement
Right.
and have that evidence.
Right.
It's not like that could apply to everybody who doesn't pass.
Just saying, we're trying to revise this, and what I'm hearing is we can't because we're beholden to Pearson, we're beholden to Cal TPA.
Law.
That's
what-
that's the law.
Just the statute.
I'm just saying we were invited here to review this, that's all. And so we can make recommendations to change that, you know what I mean? And if it goes that far, could we do that? I'm just saying, like, if there already is a secondary passing standard, then why? And I know that it has to be scored there and it's only a point, but it is a big deal because it is summative and we're trying to get away from summative. It's supposed to be formative, right? It's supposed to be embedded in the program. Then why?
Well, again, it's been operationalized this way for, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
how do I type this?
Yeah. That's why I threw it out there because and maybe it's not, maybe you're telling me that there is no possible way that we can sit here as educators and experts, as they call us in our field, and actually change this process. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing, but.
Can't change the
Yeah.
But we can suggest.
Yes, we can say, that's what I'm saying. We're supposed to be making recommendations, right?
So Josh, let me see if we can figure out how to quantify what you said. So give programs an option, no, candidates an option between a secondary pass rate or an alternative set of locally scored assessments to fulfill the TPA obligation.
Yeah, and Beverly, correct me if I'm wrong, 25 years ago, you guys said back in the 90s, this is what was happening, right? This is what I think I understood, is that we have these TPEs in place for the local preparation programs to do this, to say, we are an accredited institution and can provide quality.
Programs had to, as one of the standards, demonstrate that they did some sort of assessment of their candidates at program completion to say that they were capable, competent, had learned all the things they were supposed to learn. There was a huge array. There was no standardization about what a program might determine to be a valid assessment of their candidates. And so the issues of not just equity across programs, but equity across candidates was very big, because if a program could just say, yeah, you completed our program, so we know you're ready. And other programs could do a very rigorous assessment. And there was no standardization. And again, a big part of it was public confidence in the system. That there wasn't very much of that, because there was nothing that assessed candidates as they exited a program to say universities or districts were actually doing a good job. All we had was sort of their word on it in their accreditation documents. They could write whatever they wanted to and then survive a 3-day visit, but that was it. And so the idea that you needed to actually look at the candidates, that some external body, not the program itself, but somebody else would say, yes, you did do a good job of preparing this candidate. It's really important. And like the idea that they could just sort of, I'm reading that and I'm not following it, the locally scored assessments. That would mean that we would go back to every program developing their own assessments.
Okay, that part.
And programs don't really want to do that. I mean, the fact that we only have one in the entire state that elected to do that, not only is it very expensive and time consuming, liabilities are huge, because if you found to be biased against certain groups or individuals, I know, because I was running that system in the CSU at the time, we were shocked that Fresno elected to do their own, because we thought the cost and the liability was too huge for any one program to want to do that, because it actually is. And the work that goes into validity and reliability studies of a very complicated assessment like this is quite prohibitive.
And I understand people would be afraid of those things, but I don't also think that we should, I'm not gonna come here and give my 2 cents and be guided by fear of too much money or fear of liability or whatever, you know what I mean?
Part isn't the fear. The fear to me is program quality and consistency and fairness to candidates.
Agreed.
Tina?
I just wanted to clarify too, around this and around the former design principles for systems as well. And what we, sorry, you can't hear me very well. What we designed in California was in large part to help our profession. Our profession suffers a perception problem in large part because we don't have many of the things in it that define a profession. And this was one much needed that we could demonstrate to the public that our candidates were not just ticking off boxes that they could teach, but that there was some demonstrated evidence. Accountable. And one of the important things about this system that is also in the LPI article was that it must be designed such that, one, it builds teacher-educator understanding of what high quality teaching, learning, assessment, and feedback looks like. And that was one of the key things here. So all of our programs can be asked to demonstrate that their key teacher candidates are ready to go. But if the criteria is all over the place, and if one program is saying this is how we demonstrate it, another program is saying this is how you demonstrate it, that's actually really different than the secondary passing standard, which is saying, okay, we've met this criteria up to this point. There's a problem with this particular piece. And we're going to give the program an opportunity around this minute set of criteria to show us other evidence that this candidate really has met these standards. And I think, and that's the purpose for the secondary passing standard. And I think it's critically important to ensure, as you are saying, that we have these elements in our system still. And the local scoring was a way that we could ensure that teacher educators were learning. Because one of the problems with our profession, teacher educators are not prepared well to do their job. They aren't. And it's shocking to me. And with the standards that we develop here, with things like the performance assessments, where we actually provide evidence for what we think good teaching and learning looks like if we have the right source of evidence, it builds everybody's knowledge and understanding, and it builds the whole profession. And I think what you're saying, Josh, is you're seeing that missing to some extent. Am I correct?
What I'm hearing is all great stuff. I don't know why the end all is this, again, this high stakes summative assessment that at least one corporate partner is instituting, which could be making money off of error codes that don't make any sense. That I read these letters from this other letter that you gave us that says like the RDI TPA was called in under like critique for their scoring practices and stuff like that. And I'm saying like, yeah, we're great. California's got some great institutions. Why are we working so hard for candidates to prepare for one of these assessments when we assess all of these ourselves as people who teach at universities or who are student teaching mentors or who are mentor teachers or whatever. And it seems like we're working really hard to get through this one TPA piece. And I think if there was just a third option, something else that we didn't have to do, said that you have to do this summative assessment, even though it's supposed to be formative, maybe we wouldn't even have to be here talking about this, right? Because it would be built in formative, it would be locally scored, and people would say our local communities would know what their teachers need. I think Tori said that earlier. That's what I'm saying, that maybe there's something outside of it that we could investigate.
And I want to point out the fact that where we were in 1996 was in a very different place. In 1996, I remember when I first started teaching, it was 1993. And I remember that I was a bilingual educator and they took my textbooks, my Spanish textbooks, because it was the Ron Unz initiative. They didn't want us teaching in Spanish because they were fearful of what would come of that. And so I would like to applaud all of the efforts that have gone into the development of the TPAs, because now we have this data that can be broken down by demographic groups that we can look at and monitor. So I understand why you're presenting that idea, but I would ask for us not to throw the baby out with the bathwater when we know what was before, right? We know that in the 1990s, there were far less candidates of color than there are today. And nobody was monitoring any of that. And I feel that that is our obligation, is to ensure that we're not only monitoring, but that we're creating a system that is inclusive and that does support the needs of the candidates. My fear is that if we give the license to the institutions, we know how those systems work, right? Will they be fair? I don't know if they will. Anyway.
I captured.
And for the record, I don't throw babies. Never thrown a baby. I've never.
Bathwater or no?
Bathwater maybe, but not a baby. Okay.
Ben, do you want to make any additions, substitutions, modifications?
Just one of the things I was noticing, I don't live this practice, but it's something that occurs to me, and it's something that occurs to me with the days that we've been in here. The more you say, the less you say. The more you say, the easier it is to get lost. I see 16, 17 now valid points, several of which overlap. I think it would be really useful and helpful to get those down to just a few succinct, because otherwise I worry that things could become lost. So,
and I think that's what'll happen when we start doing the rating. We'll start to be able to quantify them and yeah. So that's kind of the purpose of the next activity. And we're going to see if it's helpful or not.
Yep.
And if it's not, then we'll try a new idea.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe just add, yeah, so I think we're just we're starting big here. We're at the kind of the mouth of the funnel. And perhaps the 16 or 17, or even, let's say we get to, by the time we get to Linda, let's say we're at 25. You know, that just kind of gives us our initial look. And then we're gonna have workshop time in subsequent meetings where we can combine, where we can eliminate, and we'll have additional rounds to refine. So maybe we pop out with 6 that have a little bit more elaboration, that are linked to some of the definitions that we've developed, that are a little bit, so it's not like a litany.
Yeah.
You know.
I just more than anything, I know there's multiple focus areas as well, so we're layering this on top of ×5.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just want to be cognizant of it.
Love the theming. I was just thinking that too, because I was thinking, Josh, about your comment, and I wonder if number 8 would cover that. Use multiple modalities, and that just kind of goes to the alternativeness of like, well, that might not be a skill that I'm most comfortable with, but I can better demonstrate my knowledge using this other skill that I have. So I like that, and I guess just hearing this, like complex systems. Like we can't and funding, like I totally get the money part, and I don't know how, and I keep thinking of money right now. Like, how does all that fit? It is a for-profit, but what is that benefit? So that's a whole other thing that I'm kind of thinking of. And the other thing I kind of wrote down was it's political, as you shared. You know, what were we able to do in the community is not what we were doing. That's the whole reason here is that we have more. And when we see these candidates not passing from certain backgrounds, why? What can we do better to help support those candidates? They don't have the right teacher. Their own educational experience was not well, and so how can we help that? But going back to what we're supposed to do, number 1, all varieties. Local stories. I'm not sure what that means by all varieties, so maybe just clarify language.
Yeah, so that came from, again, from the item at the end of the last meeting. And I believe what the person was referring to is that FAST and TPA and Cal TPA, all models. They use that specific word, so.
Should we like edit that or at all types of teaching?
So let's just performance assessment models.
And I just have it like words. Never. Oh, I will never. Don't say never. I feel the same thing. So I don't know. Just teaching performance models would be returned to local scoring.
Instead of all varieties of, just say teaching performance. And the implication is that all of them would be.
Right. But not saying all.
Okay.
Is that so I think we agreed if it's a substantive change, then we're going to add it as its own thing. And so
Right.
if
I
we
don't think
cut
that's a
all
substantive.
and add teaching, then we're excluding administrator performance assessments from the.
Oh, that's true.
Number
So could we take out teaching and just say performance assessment models return to local scoring?
You tell me. Is that okay with you?
I just don't want all.
Performance assessment.
Yeah,
models.
so just say performance assessment
And
models.
I'm gonna point out our norms, and I'm gonna ask that we not keep hearing the same voices, because I want us to ensure that there's equitable participation. So if you can, hold back so we can hear from the individuals who we've not heard from yet.
That was it. Like, so is that what we're settling on? I don't know. Is this a group? I mean, does everyone agree or Tina?
Can I add just return to some element of local scoring? Because it may be that we design local scoring a different way. Right now, I think it means you have to score all of your candidates as a faculty. There may be other models for local scoring.
What is the change?
Include a little.
There's currently a local
element.
I think that's the substance.
Include a local scoring element. Something like that.
That would be a separate one, because that's a substantive change from what was presented in the meeting.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
That's okay, right?
Yeah, we can add another one.
Just means another option for us to vote on.
Right. So what are we adding?
Would include a local scoring option.
performance assessments include a local scoring option. Assessment model. Great.
Oh, except that's what we already have.
We already have that.
And there's that.
Required elements of a local scoring option.
Why include an element of local scoring? No option. My recommendation, which I think is already happening, is to condense these to one that are overlapping. We're gonna do that already, right? Okay. And I'm looking forward to that, because I think it'll help combine them to be able to wordsmith them and also like to consider some of the nuances and complexities and also, so I don't have any other changes besides just the.
I would add, I've wrestled with formative in nature for some time, and I think if I could recommend something that it would be nice for our TPAs to offer more post submission scores to make it formative. Right now, my impressions are we call it a bridging document, but it could be an individual learning plan or something like a document that is taken to presumably their induction support providers. But it'd be nice for these TPAs, since they make all the bucks anyways, for them to provide more activities, exercises that TPPs can use once these scores come in to try to make it really formative. I think there's some things that are already with the embedded. Right now, I just think it's the main one for post, unless you fail. And I'm not talking about those, I'm talking about generally, because I think it's about growth, development, to be educative for all.
I have TPAs offer more post-submission formative data, activities, areas for growth.
Data, well, I mean, the data would be great. I think we get the scores and there's some feedback. It'd be nice if the feedback wasn't generic, but that might be solved with some of the other things that are there. What are you going to do with that feedback, I guess is what I'm saying. And right now it's sort of left up to the TPPs to figure that out, if there's anything at all, or there's this one document that presumably gets used by induction support programs or providers. And it sounds like that might not be the case. And if you get your preliminary credential, you don't have to jump into a induction program right away. So you might have very different needs. Anyway, so it'd be nice if there was just more really formative. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't work for a TPA, so on that.
Along those same lines, I'm looking at number 16, and I'm not sure, it kind of talks about the ILP and the induction plan. I feel as if there needs to be a much more organized and robust bridging and some kind of standardization in terms of making sure, accountability. Because right now, I do think that the induction plan and how programs are doing their ILPs or whatever, and how they are actually being taken into the practice with this candidate, I think that there's some things that get missed there. I don't think that that is equitable for all candidates. So I would like it to be something that is definitely paid more attention to, something that we really focus on, because again, that kind of goes to that formative in nature. And I guess this one would be a different one, but I do think that there should be a consideration to either move this into induction, if it's going to be a final licensure thing, or possibly add another iteration of some sort. If we're talking about formative, and if we're talking about it truly being something where you develop this candidate as a beginning teacher to when they get licensed after their 5 years of being a preliminary.
So Kathy, just to clarify, no, that was great. So I just wanted to make sure I'm getting this right. So was it really kind of a +1 for this building in aligned continuum that connects?
Yes, it's kind of all kind of in there with number 16.
And then the separate one was 20.
Correct. I would say, yeah, the sex.
And so for 20, consider moving TPAs into induction or add another iteration. Did you mean like another performance assessment cycle or?
Maybe, or split it in, like cycle 1 here, cycle 2 there, or, something like that. I'm not sure how that would look. I don't want it to be a whole nother TPA or anything of that nature. I just think that there are certain things that we might be wanting, that we need to look at as a beginning teacher. And then I think there are certain things that we can look at later to really truly make it formative and more representative of a beginning teacher's journey.
So then perhaps would this capture your idea effectively? Consider moving TPAs into induction or span clinical practice and induction?
Tina, did you have any additions or changes?
My wish would be that we build a system that requires engagement across the span of teacher educators and administrators. So, so that we're similar to 16, except that it's not about a continuum of candidate learning. It's a continuum of engagement in teacher preparation across universities, school districts, schools. So it's very nebulous, but
Is that so would that be revising, just so I want to make sure I capture it correctly, would that be something that would be more focus area 2 or 3 and embedding in accreditation, or to be something about revising standards? Or I'm just trying to.
it's a good question.
Where do you want me to anchor it?
Oh, no, we don't have to put it here.
Beverly?
I think I would echo Tina's confusing description of what she would like of that bridge of professional practice from pre-service into early years and beyond, of somehow strengthening that connection, not only for the candidate, but for all educators, about learning about practice and developing practice, and somehow using that bridge.
Okay, I'm going to try this one. Right. And then Tina, you can tell me if use the TPA.
Or us, the TPA.
Us. We strengthen preparation continue.
With local education needs.
From pre-service to in-service.
Yes, bridging pre-service, service into career long.
Not quite getting it.
It's close, but just saying a pre-service into career kind of implies like there's 2 set phases and you're done. I mean, sort of the whole throughout the continuum, the whole stretch, of career long learning. Career long learning. Maybe it's, yeah.
The comment after.
Have fun to write with it, but.
I know, right? I know this rally is probably like cringing with every thing. I'll just throw in like a semicolon random spot just to.
It's aspirational. I don't know how to do this yet,
Right.
but the idea being that at some level, we all have an understanding based on a continuum and based on assessments that show evidence of in classrooms. We being state of California, teacher educators, administrators, teachers, and that we have a common understanding of what that is, and we can use that, whether we're an administrator hiring new teachers, whether we're an administrator doing observations and providing feedback, whether we're a teacher educator supervisor providing feedback. In other words, we have a little bit more help with that. We share.
Also recognizing that it is a continuum.
Yeah. And it also gets at one of the things that I think is always a struggle in accreditation documents is, programs are asked to show a partnership, universities with K-12. And it's some places it's a very surface level partnership. It's not really, it's you serve on an advisory council or something. But I think we all agree that teacher development across from beginning to end of year is much better when it's shared, when it's a connection between early preparation to early career, long time. And said this is aspirational because if TPA could be part of that bridge to make that happen better, to make that partnership better, that'd be great.
So
I don't know how to do it, but it
how about this in terms of, so we do a lot of breakouts in rooms. I imagine a lot of that in the future to take things that are perhaps themed in a similar area and really workshop them and elaborate. And so knowing that that is coming in future events, we'll be able to take an aspirational statement and put some meat on the bones. Is this okay for now?
Yeah, I was pretty much echoing 21. I was intrigued about this connection from them teacher candidates and then just throughout, just as an educator, I think even just me renewing my credential, I don't do anything except for paying my money. And there's nothing else that's forcing me to continue to grow. Like that's my choice. But not all of my colleagues do the same thing. And so then you have this difference in, classroom experience for students. So being able to connect the TPA as step one of this whole journey, and that there's an actual more continuity throughout, with this understanding that we're going to continue to grow in our profession. I've been chatting with my friend who is an orthopedic surgeon, leaders who also educates other surgeons just about their process of, medical school and residency and the exams, things like that. And just even this idea that I think he said like every 10 years he has to then give like this oral board or something like that, or review the cases. The challenge with that, I like that idea. The challenge with that is that there are a lot of systems that are pressing down on teachers that really don't give us enough room to actually even think about our own growth or to be up to date with what's going on and changes in math, education, or science. We're just trying to survive top-down mandates. And so it is very aspirational, but you have to consider that there are a lot of systemic factors that prevent educators from even thinking about their lifelong growth journey. But if we could make room and space and say, hey, we want you to grow, then I think we can actually use this as those connecting that continuum. But at some point that continuum is going to get cut off because it's suffocated by a lot of other factors. So I am echoing 21 in its roughest stage. It's only going to get better, right? But
I sense some energy building around the continuum. This is all good stuff.
Okay, I have two. One is just again this idea of the formative. I don't see that captured as much in here. So ensure candidates receive feedback in a timely manner that allows for growth in their ongoing development. Yep. And then my other one, it's just kind of echoing what's in the ed code, but I feel like I've heard a lot of conversations or comments and read the comments from the survey that you shared about candidates feeling like the work that they're doing in the TPA is busy work and it's not authentic. So what I came up with is ensure TPA tasks align with the expectations of candidates at the end of their preparation programs. Do not say beginning teachers. That's all.
Lori? One, and then I just have a clarification. My one is that when we're talking about formative, that we're talking about formative in nature is actually embedded into the design of the assessment, not just embedded into preparation of program provides for candidates. And then I just want to clarify, Josh, because you mentioned that I was talking about communities. Community involvement is important, and also I think that we need to have language, as we're kind of alluding to here, language of the profession, and I think that the teaching performance assessment plays a role in helping us develop the language of the teaching profession and also of teacher education as well. Clarify that.
So what I was gonna say earlier kind of alludes to what, Beverly and Jason were already saying, where it seems as though the original intent of the TPAs has kind of been met in establishing this organization of what teacher preparation programs should be doing. And since then we've learned so much about what teachers actually should be doing and what it actually means in the classroom. So as Patricia said, it's all kind of disconnected and the candidates are missing the point of why this is an important part of their step. But I also like what Kathy was saying, where we move the TPAs towards an induction, finalizing your clear credential and that type of thing, because it also seems as though it's a credential program and then TPA and then induction, and they're three completely separate entities that require a lot of time and a lot of burden that teachers just don't have. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because it kind of connects everything that we were talking about. But what I wanted to add, there were some other comments about paying and allowing candidates to waive the fee and things like that. So I wanted to reword one and add, well, actually, I just want to add a new one because I don't think it reflects any of the ones that we already have. But I was going to say that the TPPs cover the cost of the TPAs and tuition, and candidates are held accountable for condition codes and resubmissions.
Candidates are held accountable?
Yeah. Or candidates have to pay for resubmissions when they fail the first time or something. But I like the immediate cost of having to pay for the TPA after I've already paid tuition seems mean.
Should I put like / condition codes or just?
Sure, yeah.
We'd even, okay.
Linda. Okay, so kind of adding on to, I think, number 24, what Tori was saying is this idea that that the TPA themselves need to be formative, not the prepping for it. So some ideas to add to it would be just allowing candidates to resubmit. If they missed it by 1 point or if they missed a section or whatever, just allowing them maybe 90 days to resubmit and not have to redo the whole thing. To be able to fix, revise it and get it rescored, not having to redo the whole thing. I think that would make people very happy.
So candidates have a window to resubmit
and fix whatever their low score is. If there's one section they got really low, if they just did a better job, then they would pass the whole TPA. Okay. And then number 6, I'm going to add on to number 6. With the whatever, and just add something along the lines of to look at the secondary passing standard. This says automatically route candidate submissions that receive non-scorable condition codes to the preparation program for local scoring, and then ... the secondary passing standard.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So,
So the preparation program for local scoring would be the secondary passing standard.
I don't think that's what number 6 is saying, though.
Okay, well, in that case, let's add another bullet point. Make it number 28 then. Or 29.
27.
27.
27, thank you.
Good. Cool.
Or just visiting the secondary passing standard. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the secondary passing standard very well, and that's gonna not be, it's not crystal clear. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking through it very well today.
Okay.
Okay. And then adding on, I think I'm adding on, I'm trying not to add external numbers here, but on number 16, the whole, wait, is it 16? The whole continuum to induction or whatever number we had. But somehow with the TPA, since new teachers, or I'm sorry, new candidates are already doing the TPAs, and then they're in a school, some of them are already teaching, they have to do, well, in Los Angeles Unified, it's the STOL evaluation, which is also based on the teaching standards. So like, it's a double duty. And so some way, matching the two and saying, you know what, if a teacher is doing the TPAs, then principal school districts should look at the TPA that year and consider it part of their evaluation. So I'm just trying to help align. Okay, that's it.
Okay, that brings us.
Hold on, Devin.
Sorry.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to continue to add to this.
No, it's all good. This is a process. It'll have a lot of time to become 5 or 6.
Well, yeah, I still think we need to revisit the assessor and the training and the calibration. And I just want to clarify and explain myself so you don't think, why is Devin hung up on this assessor issue? It's really because of 2 reasons. Number one, I've worked with candidates who have submitted their TPAs. They may have received a failing score. They'll revise it, they'll resubmit it, they'll get a condition code the second time. Same TPA, same content, just revising, making some adjustments. They get a condition code. Revise it again, submit it again. Sometimes they'll pass with a significant point increase, and sometimes they'll fail again with a significant point decrease. And so there's something wrong with the assessment process there. Secondly, which I think is more problematic, at least for me, addressing the assessor calibration training process, and I'm just going to be transparent here. I began the training to be an assessor, but I refused to continue because there was a significant amount of attention focused on identifying errors, or what was clearly what I considered looking for reasons to fail a candidate, rather than looking to identify strengths, which I thought was ironic because the TPAs are grounded in asset-based instruction. You know, we want the candidate to demonstrate how they're showing asset-based instruction, but the assessment seemed to contradict that. So I think the scores or assessors need to be retrained. So maybe something like retrain or refocus, you know, scores need to be retrained to focus on candidate knowledge rather than looking for errors in meeting the TPA requirements. Because I think the whole process, they first look for those condition codes or problematic errors, which I think is unfair and really an unethical practice.
Change retrain to recalibrate.
Use both words.
Both words okay? Is that?
Yeah,
Except problematic.
Retrain
and
limited. I like that.
As you can see, my literacy skills have plummeted.
Post lunchtime.
Thank you for that.
Ursula, did you have any?
No, but I see Shane.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm good, thank you.
As I was listening, I came up with one that I didn't think about earlier. But I think given the diversity of the state of California and the TPP's recovery, I think the tests do this to some degree already, but I think it's important to make sure that the tests privilege a pedagogical approach that is asset-based, culturally responsive, and community responsive. So I'd like to take an opportunity to at least think about that in our recommendations if there are areas where the assessments don't do that.
I'm gonna need you to say that one more time.
Privilege a pedagogical approach that is asset-based and community and culturally responsive.
Is that okay?
Oh, and the other thing is Matt had to leave early to teach, so he just wanted me to share his apologies for having to leave late.
Wanted to do a reword. I love Juliet's idea, but I don't, as a teacher and student, timely manner, I don't know if we should clarify what that.
I know, it's kind of losing.
And I don't know if I don't want to put a we.
I know, exactly.
Matter like, oh, at the end of the semester, oh, next week.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
You,
So I don't know, highlight, reword, I don't know what the, just.
It might have to be like an iteration down the road, right?
I just wanted to throw that out there. Timely manner is not very like clear, like, oh,
It's not at all.
I think we can
yeah.
leave that for the knockdown, drag out fights of wordsmithing in the breakout rooms at some later date. I think we'll have plenty of time to elaborate on the two. I think the next step after the voting is we'll start to theme these, chunk these, and we'll have a chance to kind of come back and look at them. If the chairs think that's a good process to look at them in natural chunks and then start to.
So I'd like to propose that we pause because we have a presentation that was scheduled at 4 o'clock. I'm wondering, would you be able, while the presentation was happening, to start doing the entry into poll everywhere?
Yes, because the presenter will be sharing their screen. Is that correct? Yes. Yes. The
Perfect.
answer is yes.
Perfect. So why don't we do two things at one time? I'm wondering, does the group need a quick break before we start with the presentation? Okay, so it is 4:05. Let's start our presentation at 4:10. And then after the presentation, we'll come back to the poll and engage in the poll activity and public comment after. Okay. Please.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Mm.
Yeah. But we did see other things, yeah. Like. It's not like us.
Go ahead.
All right, next is item 5A, focus area 2. This is an information item. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Brian Lim, professor at Sacramento State University, who has joined us today. He is the program coordinator, as well as the Ed TPA. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Lim.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. Again, my name is Brian Lim. I'm the multiple subject program coordinator, and I was asked to come and present about how we integrate TPA into our coursework. So I didn't prepare a PowerPoint presentation, but I can share the note I took on my Word file. So I'll share screen so you can see it. So I'm going to start with the PAC. Most of you are familiar with the Performance Assessment for California Teacher, which is that we are early adopter in 2007. So when we started PAC, it requires to have content area task, which is more formative assessment. And at the end, there was a teaching event, the student has to submit it. The reason I talk about this first before we do a TPA, which we're currently using, is when we first adopted PAC, there was a content area task which the student needs to submit some formative work before they do teaching event. And then we decide to do like a size method, do CAT 1, which is a science unit plan. And then social study method course decide to do planning task for social studies, and then assessment task for language and literacy method. So these are something they have to submit as a part of the PAC, and that was required. In addition, we had called an embedded signature assignment. So this was not score, just like a CAT, but this is something we decided to do because other courses, we want to take some part of this TPA. So not all one course or the takeover, trying to teach everything in entirety. So the principle of teaching, which is like a foundational class, decided to do called community study. So it is like a CAT, but we call it signature assignment. And then math method did a mini pack, so mini version of the teaching event actually. And then the reflection was done by in the field experience. Okay. And then, so these are more formative assessment, and there was a teaching event at the end the student has to go through. Okay. And then when we have to move to the PEG went away, and then we have to choose either RDI TPA or Cal TPA or FAST. Next day we decide to use RDI TPA, and as you probably know, RDI TPA requires just a summative assessment, right? Just one TPA at the end. But even though it's required just at the end, we actually decide to keep, we call it signature assignment now, not embedded signature assignment, but we kept the signature assignment most of our courses. So we focus on some of the areas, and this is an example. Task one is a planning and RDI TPA. So like a science method, their signature assignment is writing a unit plan. So they're familiar with how to planning a lesson more than just one day, entire unit. And then ELD method, they focus on case study. So how to plan the case study for individual students and needs. And then social studies, signature assignment is just scope and sequence. And then there's an e-binder where student has to keep track of some of the lessons they have to keep for their student teaching and field experiences. And then instruction, the math method, we do mini RDI TPA. By the way, we do currently we do RDI TPA in mathematics with task for literacy. So as you probably most of you know, planning, instruction, assessment is on mathematics, and then task for is literacy. So going back here, and then we do reflection because that's part of the instruction. So the field experience focus on how to reflect on their the students are teaching. And then task 3 is assessment and language literacy focus on the signature assignment, and case study identifying the strengths and needs and describes instructional strategies. And then the literacy assessment, we have two literacy, language and literacy course, and second one they focus on the literacy assessment on task 4. So the biggest difference compared to other probably program is we kept the embedded signature assignment from PAC. We're still using an RDI TPA, which really helps the students. And we try to use the same language the TPA is using, especially RDI TPA. So they're familiar with the handbook before they start their RDI TPA at the last semester. So I think they helped our candidate pretty well. And based on our score, we have a really high passing rate. I think our average more than 3 points higher than California state average. And I think having the signature assignment, having students are familiar with some of the terminology really helped. I think that's all I have a presentation. Any questions? You have a step program?
Questions from the work group? Vanessa?
What structures from the RDI TPA did you reference when creating this outline?
We didn't reference to any. The RDI TPA was created by Scale, which was create a pack. So there's a lot of similarities between them. So when we decide, we actually, the program as a whole, entire program, we met and we decide what is important. We have to decide first which we want to focus on, math or literacy. Because just a couple of years back, we only had a math or literacy. And now there's task 4 for either math or literacy. So we have to do both. So we decided to focus on mathematics because the literacy, we already had 2 courses, they're taking plus ELD courses. So there are 9 units they were doing. So there are plenty of literacy support. But the mathematics, we only have 3 units. And, the candidates, they know this is a high-stake exam. And when they have to take a high-stake exam, they really focus on it. So when we decide to mathematics, and actually I'm a math method instructor, I can see the big difference from the candidates before TPA into having requiring TPA, because since it's a high stake exam, they really take it seriously about some of the TPEs. We talk about it because they have to demonstrate it in TPAs. So that's what we decided to do mathematics. And the other signature assignment, we just take a lead because it's similar to what we have done before. That's why I showed that PAC embedded signature assignment. A lot of those kind of continue on and they add TPA. And then kind of adding a note, as you know, add TPA starting in next academic year, we only have one choice. It has to be literacy with a test for mathematics, because we are combined with the RDI exam. And even the literacy, they have to focus on reading and non-competition. So it really limits what they're accessing in. So we have a little concern about that, because right now they do have some choice of math or literacy, or even literacy, they have different things, depends on their grade level. Whereas combining RDI, it kind of limits what they're going to be, evaluated on, what they're teaching. Basically, it's reading and literacy. So that's concern we have. So we'll see how the new TPA, the California version, comes out, how it's going to be different from the current version they have on literacy. How about I answer your question?
Josh?
Yeah, I just was wondering if you could elaborate more on the mini ed TPA that you showed us for the math classes. Like just tell us a little bit more about how that is implemented and how that class works and all that, if you could.
So mini ed TPA is again, it's a mini version. So instead of 3 to 5 days, they do just 1 day, but they have to try to integrate all the required tests too, which is engaging students, rapport with the students, deepening students' understanding, using representation. So they're trying to demonstrate that one lesson. And the reason we do mini ed TPA, we do that prior semester to when they do ed TPA, is to realize how it's difficult to put that in like a 15-minute video. So we even actually showed it to like a 7-minute maximum, see if you can put it all in there. And they realize they cannot do that. So actually, this is sort of practice. So when they teach, they cannot just stand and deliver or just do something for 10 minutes because they won't be able to show everything. So they kind of realize it. So we discussed this in our coursework. That's why it's called mini ed TPA. It's just to help you kind of plan ahead. When they do ed TPA, they have to realize that they cannot put transition time, for example, one workstation to the other, because that's kind of waste of time. So that how to use that 2 video clip instead of just 1 video clip. So we don't tell you what to do, but they realize, and it also helps them watching themselves teaching. It really helps them because they find out they do a lot of direct instruction where we're trying to have them more students engaged. So we don't really grade it, but we give a lot of feedback so they really understand what they have to demonstrate in their TPA.
Other questions from the work group?
Just one more thing. Also, we do use ed TPA rubric. So we kind of give them the feedback using ed TPA rubric. So again, they're familiar with it. So if they get 2 or 3, they can read it and see what they need to work on, because rubric is very detailed in ed TPA. Sorry, I interrupt someone speaking.
Any other questions?
And I hear if someone is asking.
Go ahead, Tina.
I was wondering how many faculty are involved, sort of directly involved with preparing students for the TPA?
So we do have, let's say, seminar class instructors. So they have to take a course. In that course, they can ask those questions at their last semester. So in some ways, everyone's involved. As I said, we do have a signature assignment. So pretty much all the courses, we take one part of the TPA, the planning, instruction, assessment, literacy assessment. We try to focus on just small area instead of the entire thing. So they are familiar with some of the rubrics. And then some of the requirement they need to do. For example, mini ITP, they do require to submit a video clip, the shorter version of it. So they actually practice the video recording themselves. And then their final semester, they do have a seminar class where, the faculty who can answer questions if they have some technical issues or they're not sure about some of the prompts they're asked to respond. And I know we're not supposed to tell you exactly what to do. So that's kind of my job as an TPA coordinator. I always train the instructor what kind of comments they can give and what not to give, and not to select the curriculum for that, but more general idea of what they're looking for. So the TPA scores are looking for, so they can respond to the prompt the way the rubric is described.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Curious to know about the collaboration you have between your teacher candidates and the school districts they work in, or they're doing their fit and teaching.
So school district, now pretty much all the school districts we place during teacher, they're familiar with TPA requirement. So when we first adopted, it was very challenging because they didn't know if, when they go through a teacher training, they didn't have to do the TPA, maybe it's packed. So we do have to have a lot of training. Luckily, we have some grant money to bring in some CTs and supervisors, because a lot of supervisors didn't know about TPAs. So we actually met about once a month on campus. So, first few years. Now we don't have to do that because pretty much everybody knows the TPA, but yeah, the grant money really helped out everybody train, CTs and the supervisors especially.
How do you feel your teacher candidates, or how do they feel about the TPA? What's their assessment? Was it worthwhile?
They are aware of TPA from the beginning, and they do stress out. But again, when I showed our passing rate, they a little bit come down because we have over 95% passing rate first trial. So from when we implemented, 2017? So, but it is a lot of work. So that's why just having mini signature assignments throughout the entire course, they kind of know what they need to do. So I don't think it's not as stressful as some other programs I'm aware of, because I still get a call from our sister institution because they're aware of our passing rate and they want to know how come we have so many students in first trial. And I try to explain, but having the support from the entire program is very difficult in some of the programs, because even in our program, I'm in multiple subjects. And our single subject passing rate is not that high. And one of the reasons is our single subject program, they don't collaborate as much as the multiple subject. Again, we had a grant money to do this. We get extra pay to bring in the CTs and bring in supervisors, even faculties, we get together. So each our content area, we decide how to write the unit plan, how to even have a lesson plan template. So we're really collaborative. So even in our campus, our single subject, mostly we have a different, way of doing this. And multiple subject, we're in really good shape right now. So yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing is that, that helps with their confidence in, taking the test. But what is their actual assessment of the assessment and the process? Like, do they feel that it's worthwhile, that it is relevant to what they're being asked to do as an educator?
Answer is yes, because we do talk about engaging students, or asking higher thinking questions, deepening students' understanding, really student-centered lesson. And you cannot really demonstrate by passing another, written test, right? Whereas this one is a performance assessment. So they have to show really engage, students engaging it, asking higher thinking question. And so they need to practice that. So, and they realize actually, even in mini TPA, for example, watching themselves video recording, they say themselves, I'm not asking, I'm only asking yes, no question, or thumbs or thumbs down. So they actually ask those kind of questions during class. How can I make this more student-centered lesson? And challenges we have is some of the curriculum, the school district we're using about a dozen school districts around here. They use a scripted curriculum. So the teacher pretty much read through, and then our candidate, I asked to do the exact same. So there's this challenge. So we discussed about how to make those scripted curriculum more student-centered lesson. And that's where the teacher has to do. And they realize they need to do that no matter, there's no perfect curriculum. So they realize what, they have to, as a teacher, they have to make the changes. And then there is no guideline to do that except practicing things like this. So they see value of it. And also some of them realize, and we do talk about it, National Board Certification is kind of a bigger version of a, teacher performance assessment. So we talk about that as well. So they see the value of it.
Nessa, then.
Could you describe the types of communication and or levels of support that you receive directly from at TPA that might guide your coursework and or high passing rates?
So we didn't get our support, but now you probably know there is a monthly at TPA. Now it's, I think, twice a semester. So there is a TPA coordinator from Pearson. They meet with all the TPA coordinator in California. Actually, I just got an email while I'm waiting. They canceled this month. I think they're going to meet in next month because they wanted the field testing. But anyway, that's where all the TPA coordinator in California actually ask questions, some of the updates, and that's why I'm aware of the field test coming up. They're selecting right now, starting in December. They're going to pilot it, or field test, starting in December. So we get that information, and that's where we can discuss some of the things and questions. Because some content area, the passing rates are low overall. So we're trying to find out what other campuses are doing. So we do have an opportunity to discuss this in that monthly meeting. And we had that for about 2 or 3 years. That's where we get the support.
I'm so sorry, Linda, you were first and then Patricia. Thank you.
What supports do you provide for the students who don't pass the TPA?
So
The 5% that don't pass?
Yeah. So we do have a faculty who teach, the support class, actually sit down with those students and then, suggest, look at what's the best approach, because usually they have to submit just one of the tasks if their score is very close, or some cases they have to do the entire thing over because, it's difficult to change like a video recording because you cannot teach the students just re-record it. So we do have one of our faculty get a little bit of a release time to sit down with the students and actually guide them. But it's up to students to submit it because usually the score comes up towards the end of the semester and faculty doesn't work during the summer or winter break. But there's a short window, about 2 weeks after the score and faculty support individual students. And like I said, we have over about 250 student candidates, and we have about 10 students, around 10 students who fail. So it's not that many. So we can have just one faculty manage that if they don't fail.
That was my question exactly, just what supports, what for struggling teacher candidates, what types of support. So it's the same question, just reworded. So thank you for your information.
Any other questions or comments? All right, so we will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments? No public. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lim. We're very grateful to you for joining us today.
Thank you.
This item is now open for discussion. Any comments from members?
And I'm not sure how to phrase or word this, but for universities or programs that are not doing as well, can we ask them? Like why, or again, I know everyone's doing their best but I don't know if we can find someone like to tell us like, well, this is where we struggled. Our teacher candidates were not passing because of this reason, but we're working towards making this better. So I don't know, is there someone out there willing?
Maybe a recommendation could be collecting that data from those institutions.
Right, and again, it's very sensitive because I know that, oh, I'm doing it wrong, and not that they're doing it wrong on purpose or whatever on purpose, it's just the way the system. So, my question or comment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, if we had an idea, it seems, when I was asking my question, it seems like a lot of their feeling about the assessment is really tied to the support that they give. And if there's a way to design these assessments that actually candidates have to either reflect or talk about the support that they're given in their responses, something that really forces the programs to give best practices within support, and the programs who are already doing that is just, you know, streamline helping them in that portion of the assessment. But if the assessment itself really is tying in somehow, like either the program is involved, I don't know how to actually do it, but something that really kind of forces the support that these candidates are getting versus other candidates. I just don't know if that's something that's allowed assessment like that.
I'd like to recommend that.
And what are these numbers?
Follow up on what Jason has said is, it seemed it'd be possible for the commission to identify both programs with high pass rates that seemingly do a good job of preparing and helping their candidates get ready, but also programs that have a high percentage of second chance pass rates that maybe do a good job of helping candidates who aren't successful the first time and then become successful. And then maybe disseminating a model of best practice for both of those situations for other programs.
And then if I could add, Beverly, to that idea, in addition to that, programs that do an outstanding job preparing candidates of color. I would love to hear from them as well, that don't have as many condition codes.
It would seem, Mary, tell me if I'm wrong, that the commission would be able to disaggregate that data about first time pass rates, but then high success in second time. Because those would be different, I would think, models of supporting candidates. It would be a relatively easy thing to ask those programs to disseminate a best practice, you know, webinar or module or something that other programs could learn from.
So I think that, I mean, we have the data. It's collected as part of the whole registration and completion process. So I don't know that we have all of the data that we would need, but we know about first time pass rates, second time pass rates, third time, cumulative, and people who never pass. So you've seen some of those data have been presented to you in the last meeting. So sorting seems imminently possible. It's just not a cut that we've done right now. I mean, we don't necessarily have the research staff to dig in as fully to some of these questions. But I think, I mean, I could be hearing a potential recommendation here about areas to study more fully so that we can shed light on something. I don't want to put words in your mouth there. But I also want to say, Jason, I didn't mean to be, but in my response to you, because we do have an annual survey, a program completer survey that when somebody applies for their credential, they have the opportunity to fill it out. We get a pretty high pass rate on it because it's on the route to applying for your credential. And there's a whole section in it about support you received for the TPA. We also, the Learning Policy Institute did a study recently. I think we've shared this in your resource document, but we gave you a tidal wave of information in the resource document. Probably haven't had a chance to look at that. They correlated survey responses by institution with institutional pass rates and looked at, a particular institution with, let's say, a 50% pass rate and the feedback that showed up in the surveys from candidates that completed that program. And they were able to correlate higher pass rates with stronger reports of support, and conversely, lower pass rates with, less, lower indications of support from the program. It's a kind of first attempt to get to this question of what role is support playing in candidate performance for first-time pass rates. And then moving into second-time or cumulative pass rates, we have kind of the first pass at that in this LPI report that came out, and we heard a presentation on earlier this year. We do have one of your questions from in 1263 is focused on survey. And what questions are we asking? What questions might you think we should be asking in order to get a better view and better understanding of the experiences that candidates are having? And not just candidates, we also survey employers of new teachers at the point they earn their clear credential. They get an opportunity to do a little bit of retrospective, but it's more focused on their induction program. They're cooperating teachers in whose classroom they did their student teaching or residency work, or whoever their mentors were, if they were an intern or took a different path, et cetera. So there's some interesting triangulation possible based on those different groups and their experiences here. But there's real potential, I think, for this group to advise the commission about that whole process, what we're learning, what we'd like to learn, and to what end we might want to put that learning so that we're getting the information we need. So
I was just thinking more so like during the process. I know that you're not supposed to get help from on your TPA. There's like a few sections where candidates typically struggle. And before I complete that section, it's required of me to have a particular conversation or support session with my program advisor, and then include that narrative or feedback within the assessment before I do that section that typically people mess up on. The program automatically knows the candidates are going to be asking for support for being able to do X, Y, and Z somehow, but still keeping it anonymous, like you're not helping them with their response. But before they do it, they have to go seek support for a particular area. And then programs would automatically know, like, okay, they're going to have to seek support in this area, so let's just embed it. Make sure all programs are embedding it. But even just while I'm taking it, so not after the fact, while I'm taking it, it requires me to get certain levels of support before I even put in my response. It's like, stop, do this, get this support feedback, now submit.
Right. I think you're starting to articulate areas for recommendation, I think, for you all to consider. And I believe there is a persistent and deeply embedded misunderstanding about what kind of support can be provided to candidates while they're doing their TPA. And I think at our next meeting, we're going to dig more deeply into the standard that defines levels of required support, available and legitimate support, and areas where a faculty member cannot provide support. And all of that notwithstanding, the standard is used in accreditation to determine what kinds of support candidates programs are providing. I'm just going to say, I think this is an opportunity-rich area for you all to dig in and make some recommendations about. And I think the embedding conversation gives you a very nice context for that. And might be some questions you want to pose if you didn't already today with our first presentation tomorrow, around the support. you may want to go deeper with some of that, but, you know, as Sac State was talking about, their embedded mini TPEs, Ed TPAs, as a kind of formative task structure they've put in place. And when the faculty member Brian said, yeah, so they know what they have to do when they get to the Ed TPA, was very interesting way in which they've approached the formative expectations of this assessment, given the big monolithic end of program thing that people have to do, and might be why they're seeing 95% first time pass rates. Just, you know, speculation on my part, but.
Any additional comments? And
Just going back and kind of connecting with something we talked about last month was trying to understand where the duplicative nature comes into it. And I saw lots of evidence of duplicity today in how being run, which I agree is likely contributing to success in the outcome, but I can see where that is happening in that program. And so just wanted to point that out because it was a question we asked last time.
Yeah, just to kind of touch on the LPI report and the possibilities in the charge of this work group. The LPI report is shedding light on, do candidates, candidates who are supported more do better, right? That's essentially the finding, right? But the questions that candidates are asked after they take the TPA, the data that is collected doesn't get at the chart. It's all about support. Were you supported? How were you supported? But it doesn't get at the things that are in the charge of this work group. It could be potential additional fertile ground and a chance to hold the assessment itself accountable. If you find the experience valid and authentic, was it formative in nature for you? To what extent was it embedded in preparation? And I mean, so just, I guess what I'm trying to say is the assessment can be, through questions, through other things, it can be subject to the charge as well. It can have to hold up that higher standard. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but I wanted to add that to the LPI discussion, because it's looking at the assessment as a given, unchanging. And then it's asking the candidates, how well were you supported? And the more that they are supported, the better they do on the assessment. It doesn't ask the candidates, did this help you in your craft? Did you find this to be valuable? How did this impact the other aspects of your preparation, like clinical practice, like working with your mentor teacher? And, what can we do to make sure that it's not undermining? I don't know. So there's an opportunity to expand in that space rather than just take the current assessment as the given and measure the support. I mean, you could measure support. The more support people get on things, the better they tend to do on them. That doesn't really get at the thing itself.
any other comments? Wanna go?
But also, you might know how closely the structure, how closely aligned the structure is of the TPA versus the national board certification process?
Don't know that answer.
Actually, I remember when they did their presentation, Ed TPA, not Cal TPA, but Ed's TPA specifically said they modeled their assessment based on national board, which I'm going to comment. I think that's ludicrous because that's like saying, oh, we're going to take T-ball and model after major leagues and teach it to the T-ball kids. Like national board is something like it's only what I forget the percentage of teachers, but it's a rigorous process that teachers do in their 10th, 15th, 20th year of teaching, and not everyone passes that. And to take that whole huge, very stressful process, and here new teachers, this is like, it's that whole idea of like, yes, we want people to aspire and be inspired, but do we kill them at the beginning of their career? Like,
They have to be in 3 years. You have to have 3
it's
years.
minimum 3, but it used to be 5. And most people don't do it in the first 3 years. They do it, like they have to be inspired to do it on their 10th year even.
Well, you have to be in there for 3 years before you could even
Consider, yes, but I'm saying most teachers who do that national boards, they're usually in their 10th year, 12th year of teaching. Like I had to sit there and talk my whole staff into attempting it with me.
But it's a lot, the Ed TPA is a much, I mean, it was informed by this idea, but it's a much smaller, I mean, it really, your analogy of T-ball to majors, I think is appropriate. If you think about the national boards being your highest level teachers, the Ed TPA is the pared down version. It is the T-ball that's getting them ready for that.
It is modeled after it, but it doesn't mean it's the same level of rigor. I'm gonna disagree because I took both. And I told you, everyone laughed that I was the gal who could pass the national board and couldn't pass my Ed TPAs. I was really struggling with the Ed TPAs, and that's my honest truth. And I really worked hard.
About that. Not that it's the same total. And again, I don't have no ed experience, or like I said, I just know history experience. So I wonder though, why they mentioned that Sac State saying, hey, we talk about national boards when they're not before they're preliminary. But I had two thoughts that kind of popped out, and I don't know the answer, so I wanted to ask the group, or you guys up there. So when universities design programs, teacher prep programs, is there a staffing ratio they must follow? Because I wonder how that staffing ratio would look toward like teacher prep. So I heard Sac say we have 250 candidates, and he didn't say how many faculty, but only
That's 7.
seven. Okay, 7. So I just wonder if there's like
There's a wide range of variability. So for example, LEA programs, county office programs, we don't hire full-time staff. We use temporary contract management employees or an equivalent. But they're experts in their field. Like if we're bringing somebody on board to teach a course related to reading, we vet that person to make sure that they're current in their knowledge base, so forth and so on. I've also served in higher ed where I directed the Masters of Ed Leadership and taught in the doctoral program. And I came to the county specifically because I feel like we're able to be much more innovative simply because of the systems of bureaucracy that exists in where I was at my institution. I can only speak from my experience. So
I would just like to offer too that, tomorrow we're going to hear from CSU Fresno, UC Santa Barbara, National University, and Riverside. And so that might be a great question to add on.
I mean, just thoughts out there that I was thinking in that just program design and how things are going back to the support, like Mary was sharing, like there's this correlation of higher support, better pass rates, not so much. So I'm wondering what that magic number is. And then just to help justify FTE.
But it depends, right? Because national is actually, I think they offer more credentials than any other institution in the state, right? So they're massive. And you're looking at a Sac State, which has like 7 faculty members, which is very difficult to compare.
The learning models are very different. So what I understand with national, I've never done nationals program, but I'm tempted just to have the experience. Is they do 1 class a month. It's very different from a lot of the more traditional.
There is no standardized saying of you must have this many professors for this many candidates. There is no standardized.
So, okay. Anyway.
Beverly?
There's a standard for supervision, clinical supervision out in the field, but not for faculty members. But what this conversation is making me think of is that earlier when I talked about like a model for how programs support candidates who fail and succeed and whatever, is that there's differences among the programs, among their resources, private versus state schools versus whatever resource. There's also differences in the candidates that they serve, that they are not all served. There are some very selective, very expensive, very well-resourced programs that admit very few candidates. And these are candidates that might be very elite and may not be struggling with some of the issues that candidates who are going to state schools, for example, might be struggling with, either poverty issues, language issues, family issues. I mean, there's a wide range. And so when we talk about how you support candidates, back to what you're talking about candidates of color, also just different populations of candidates at different programs and how they can best be supported, because it won't be a one size fits all, because they all have different issues.
I think just one of the reasons why the chairs wanted a kind of a diverse representation of programs to hear from in this embedding conversation is that so the recommendations, I mean, we have our own teacher preparation program in our mind. as what preparation programs are like. But with this group, the recommendations really have to be broadly applicable to a wide range of programs, from a more boutique, sort of smaller, specialized program to someone that's serving candidates at scale. And so hopefully we get that range in the presentations.
Wonderful. Well, now I will pass it to Mandy to.
I'm gonna return to 4A. In recognizing that it's 4:55, we have done a little about face. So instead of doing a fun, interactive, everyday poll here together, what we have done is turned it into a Google form with the same choices, with all 27 of your items. We are asking that at some point tonight, before maybe you turn the TV on, that you complete the survey tonight. That will allow us to then synthesize the data in the morning and push it back out to you. I apologize that we can't do it in real time, but we were having other conversations earlier that we didn't want to cut off. So if you'll do that activity tonight, please, that would be really helpful. We also, yes, go ahead.
So I have learned from my colleagues in the back that sometimes sometimes the LEAs, so the reason why some of you were receiving the emails and some of you were not could be because of the servers in your districts or schools. So what I did is I sent the poll until we can figure that out. I'm gonna move things that are public and totally fine to send on the open internet. I will send those to you. So the form has gone to your personal email.
And our CTC email,
And
correct?
the CTC email.
So please only take it once, but pick one.
But you have to enter your name, so I'll see if you're.
And in the interest of setting the stage for tomorrow, the program standards have been provided for you in your documentation today. The specific part of the program standards that speak to the TPA are found on 5A-7 to 9. It's 2.5 pages, pretty quick reading. But if you can look through those program standards tonight, I know some of you work with them more frequently, but if you'll just take a minute to review those, that may help us generate questions and things like that tomorrow. And with that, we will now open for public comment regarding 4A because we hadn't done that before. So public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, do we have any public comment? All right. So with the public comment period for this item, it is now closed. So we are on closing remarks. Mary, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Just thank you all for your continued effort. This is may hurt your brain. It hurts my brain sometimes. Not as much as watching election returns will be a whole different subject. And thank you. Looking forward to the conversations tomorrow. Thank you, Madam Chairs. Madam's Chair.
Do you have any closing remarks?
Also, just, thank you for your flexibility. The November meeting is going to be a little bit all over the place, but I appreciate the thoughtful insights that you're continuing to put into this process, and look forward to having opportunities, smaller groups in the future to take these larger ideas and start to build around them. Really excited, especially about this. It seems like the continuum idea, even in that national board conversation. Like, well, okay, how does this connect with national board? It's exciting.
All right. Well, with that, please do your survey this evening. You are welcome to stay here and do it quickly. We will now recess day 1 of the work group meeting and reconvene at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Special tutor to explain homework to me.
Oh, of course.